Get me on.
Okay, so what's up, Mike?
What's up, Monty?
You don't know. So you're talking about your 10 reimagined commandments, right?
Well, not reimagined. So basically, I started writing this thing. I kind of got inspired last night, and I started recontextualizing the Ten Commandments.
Yeah.
And uh, so what that means is basically it all started with this concept from Ricky Gervais. So the comedian Ricky Gervais, he sort of posited this test. I don't know if he invented it. I just know that he said it. So basically, what he said in terms of defending science versus religion, he said if you wipe out all the science books that ever existed, the principles of science will be rediscovered. You know, whereas if you wiped out all the religious books, you're not going to get all of those same stories. You're not going to get the whatever Noah's Ark. You're not going to get all this other stuff, or the equivalent, I guess, in the Quran or other holy books. And so, but what struck me as someone that, even though I'm not Christian now per se, but I feel like I appreciate. I don't know. I grew up Christian, so like I don't know. There's a part of me that really wants to kind of. I'm basically a Christian with no faith. So
I understand that. I actually identify with that.
So for me, I liked looking at the Ten Commandments and thinking like, is there something there? Is there some element of universal truth? Because one of the things that really dogged me as a Christian, or something that really that irritated me or annoyed me as a Christian, was it seemed weird that you needed the Bible, and it didn't strike me as making any sense. Not that the universe has to make sense to me, but it was weird to me that someone in the middle of the jungle, in the middle of South America, if they did not have the holy book, then they were just damned. If they just never saw, if they never met, someone. So, and that seems odd to me. I was if God created the earth, and everyone had sort of, equal access to the knowledge of the universe, of the world, it seemed odd that just because they happened to be far away from a Bible, that they would just go to hell. Like, that seems odd to me. Yeah. And I feel like there would be universal.
Dude, I remember the day that I had that conversation in Sunday school. I remember the day I had that conversation.
Oh, okay.
I remember it.
How did it go? How did it go?
Because I remember we sing the song, Jesus loves the little children, all the little children of the world, red and yellow, black and white. They're precious in his sight, right? So who's the red kids? Who's the white? Who's the yellow kids? And then I remember asking, like, what happens to the kids that never hear about Christianity? Do they go to hell by default? And like, it was kind of like a I gotta be careful moving too much, but it was kind of like a dancing answer, because she wasn't really prepared to answer that question.
Sure.
Like because I didn't know how many people are in China and India, but I knew at that time there were a lot. And I said, well, there are what, a good third of the people in America on the planet are Chinese and Indian, and they're all going to hell because they didn't grow up Christian.
Yeah.
Or
they didn't have access.
Yeah. So basically it was like, well, it's our job to take the Christianity to them. And I even pushed back further, and I said, don't you think that they already have a system of beliefs that work for them? So that I ran into that early. So continue. You were saying.
And so that's the sort of Ricky Gervais test. Like to me, I like this concept of like, what are the concepts of religion, specifically of Christianity, that could withstand erasure, right? That if you wiped out all the knowledge of the world, what are the sort of universal, like, moral truths, I guess, that would emerge? Because I feel like that's essentially what the function of religion is. And maybe I'm, too whatever. Maybe I'm being naive or whatever, but to me, I feel like it's kind of like, what are these essential moral truths or these sort of societal truths that if you wiped out all of the books, whether they be holy books or psychology books or who knows, like philosophy books, if you wipe them out, what are the concepts that would reemerge?
Well,
Or what are
well,
uh
and this is one of the. We're going to talk about this later about how people basically stop going to church in America, or their
sure,
young
sure, sure,
people
sure.
aren't going to church anymore,
Yeah,
and it's very easy to look at things as in A or B, black or white, right or
right.
wrong. Like that's very easy. You can see that in American politics. Like people will say that Joe Biden is all the way bad or all the way good, and Donald Trump was all the way good or all the way bad. You could do that any
Yeah.
way you choose to look at it. But one of the hard things about religion and science is that they're both right. Like science, it gets things wrong, but it has a process for
Right.
figuring out what the mistakes are and
Right. Right.
fixing them. And religion gets some things right and wrong. The only thing with religion is that it relies so much on belief and faith. And if you have a belief and a faith
So
in
does
something
science.
that's wrong,
That's
like how do you fix that? Like science has a process for fixing that. Religion doesn't.
But
So
religion does. And like I would push back on that because I feel like religion does, but religious people often like bristle at it. They're the ones that kind of mess things up. Like I feel like, but that's I feel like yeah, we can address that later, I guess. But going back to this idea of and I don't know how in depth you want me to go in terms of these Ten Commandments things, but the 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 thing the other the other part that I always thought was that always bothered me specifically about the Ten Commandments was that I feel like there's also this George Carlin bit on the Ten Commandments. I don't know if you're familiar with it,
I,
but I think if I remember correctly, it's been a while since I've looked at it. I need to look at it again for this book maybe that I'm writing or this article or whatever that I'm
well,
writing.
I think he said something about like 4 or 5 of them make complete sense, right?
Well, no, like, well, if I'm correct, if I remember correctly, he basically reduces 10 commandments to one commandment, I think.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So he just sort of like he does this bit and he just and but I can't remember really any of it except for the abstract notion that he crushes it down to maybe like one or two. I want to say he does end up doing crushing it just to one thing, and but but to me that is emblematic of my own sort of struggle with the Ten Commandments because when I was a kid learning them, they didn't make sense entirely, and it was always
Well,
odd to
the
me.
first 3 or 4 make sense. Don't kill, don't steal, like
But
don't.
those aren't for the first four. That's
Yeah,
the
that's right.
thing.
That's right. That's right.
The first four are, and that's where like the honestly that was the light bulb moment for me, right? Because the first one is thou shalt not have any other gods before me, and not any graven images, and like don't take the Lord's name in vain, and like those. And that's the thing, it's like it's interesting to me because I tried to address, like I said, the epiphany that I had yesterday is that it contextualized those commandments. Those first, because I feel like those are the first three especially, I feel like are the ones that people are most problematic with because they all seem very similar and almost redundant.
You see the
But
screen?
yeah, you got them up
Yeah.
there. And so, and for me, I had an epiphany that contextualized the first commandment. And then as I started analyzing the first commandment, the second and third commandments suddenly made so much sense to me.
Okay.
And I'm just like, oh, wow. I think I sort of unlocked something, at least just in terms of my own thinking. I'm just like, wow, that's really cool. And suddenly it was like, wow, actually, this is really wise. If this is what I think if it's saying what I think it's saying, this is actually really well designed. Like suddenly, like I said, it just suddenly sort of like clicked to me. And that's what inspired me to start writing yesterday. And I'm just like, this is um, this is wild. So, like I said, I haven't finished it. I've only gotten through the first four, but um, but yeah. So like that's kind of where, that was why I brought it up. I guess like that was the weird
Yeah.
epiphany that I had last night. Um, so I don't know how familiar you are with the Ten Commandments, I guess,
Yeah.
but
Oh
uh,
yeah.
but so for me, uh, the sort of my epiphany moment or the epiphany thought was that well, let me ask you first, how do you interpret the first commandment?
You should have no other gods before me.
Yeah, so what does that mean to you?
That means that to me, I guess I would interpret that as there should be nothing more important in your life than your allegiance to God.
Okay,
So like
so
you
how is
shouldn't you
that?
shouldn't you shouldn't worship money or do your earthly desires or whatever more than you should covet or want to make God know that you appreciate
So
him.
perfect, because I feel like that's how I learned it as well. But so I'm curious, how does that differ from the second commandment then?
You should not make yourself an image and form. Make for yourself an image. Okay, you should not bow down to the Lord. Okay, so for that for us or for us now, I don't know if that necessarily has a lot of like contextual value. But from what I've learned is that this had everything to do with the time, Romans and Greeks and had all these gods and they did all of these rituals and stuff. So they prayed to X God for X and Y God for Y, and they had all these different gods, and this was kind of a remedy for that. Like
Okay,
you don't have to pray to the fertility god so that you get pregnant, or pray to the sun god that it's going to be sunny tomorrow. You just pray to me.
but see, that's great. That's perfect. So now let me okay. So now let me give you my theory,
Okay.
right? And I want to hear what you have to say. So basically, yeah. So you're saying that the first one is you can't worship anything more than me, than God, and then the second is sort of anachronistic, right? It has something to do with like these rituals
Yeah.
or fertility gods, and or actually these physical objects that people created,
Yeah.
you know. And the thing is, in my whole life, people said that these two commandments are the same. It's like don't make any graven images, as in like you don't worship money, right? Like money is like a man-made thing. Don't worship money. But also at the same time, like you said, the first commandment seems to say don't worship money. Don't put anything ahead of God, right? So here's the thing. The thought that I had yesterday was that what if the first commandment was about recognizing that you are not God, that you yourself are not the most important thing in the universe, and
Uh,
that in and similarly, like the 12-step program, you need to surrender and accept that there are things that you will never know.
yep.
You have to accept that you are powerless, that you are broken, right? Like if the first commandment was like, you know what, I am God and you're not, essentially. Like that's kind of like what the first commandment is. I'm God and you're not. That's rule number one. And that's suddenly that's what made sense to me. Suddenly contextually, it was like, whoa, that I thought like, wow, that makes sense as the first commandment. It's like, you know what? You are powerless. You have to surrender. You need to accept service. You need to accept that
Yeah.
there are greater things, and
Yeah.
especially a greater like force in the universe than you. And it's sort of like the it's basically rule number one: be humble. Be
Yeah.
humble.
I got that.
And that to me suddenly contextualized the Ten Commandments, or at least this first one, because I'm just like, yes, that makes sense. That seems wise. If I were God, again, and this is so kind of insane for me to think about, but in terms of universal truth, if I need to if I need to give a message to people, my first message could be humble, right? Be humble, man. Like you are not the center of the universe, and you cannot figure everything out. You are not, you are capable of doing amazing things, but you need to remember, number one rule: remember, you don't know everything. You're never going to know everything.
Or you don't know everything. You don't have control over everything.
Yes, exactly.
Even if you think that you control your own life.
Exactly. As powerful as you are at the same time powerless. And you are at the same time not in control. Like you said, as much control as you have to remember you are in control of nothing. Or you don't have as much control as you think you do. And that's what I thought. I was like, whoa, that makes sense to me. And that passes the Ricky Gervais test. Because if you live long enough, you will get that message from the universe.
Absolutely.
The universe will teach you that.
Or you'll see other people learn the lesson. I mean,
exactly.
Steve Jobs, right? Like exactly. Steve Jobs, wow, Steve Jobs, amazing. Oh, he's got cancer. He can't. You
can't buy his way. He can't buy his way. He can't genius his way out of that.
No.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's the thing. That's what I really love. Like, that's number one. Rule number one. And suddenly put it into context for me. I'm just like, yes, okay.
Well, it sounds like you need to be writing a book about this. But keep going.
So that's what I'm saying. So like suddenly the first commandment fell into place, and I'm just like, yes, that makes sense to me. And weirdly, I felt this odd peace. So like I said, this just struck me yesterday, and suddenly I just felt at peace. I'm just like, that makes sense. That makes sense now.
Yeah.
So then I looked at the second commandment. And then I'm just like, okay, now the second commandment makes so much more sense because that's the traditional, don't worship money. So okay.
No, don't worship money. Don't worship.
Don't worship anything.
So there is this mirror. That's right.
There is this void. Okay, so rule number one is there is this void. You are never going to know everything. And so rule number two, don't put anything there. Don't put anything there that you think is supposed to be there. It's just like, no, don't put money there. Don't put fame there. Don't put all this other, don't worship anything else. It's like, because none of that is the answer either.
Yep.
Guess what? None of that is the answer either. Okay.
Yep.
So you're not going to know everything, and there's no way you're going to know everything. So don't put stuff there. And suddenly that made sense to me. As the second thing to mention, to someone is, don't chase after these goals, these pursuits that take you away from, anything more. You're not going to find your fulfillment or self-satisfaction. You're not going to reach your goals by worshiping this stuff, right?
Yeah.
And like I said, the second commandment suddenly made sense to me. I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense as number two. And then that's where I'm just like, there's a pattern here. Like there's a wisdom in even the order that they're presented.
Well, and there is the word that separates science and religion, right? Wisdom, right? Like,
sure.
Like wisdom comes from life experience. Like there's some things that, I shouldn't say it separates it, because I mean, there's wisdom in science too, but if you see people walking off a cliff and they keep walking off the cliff and they die, you're like, okay, well, let's stop walking off the cliff. That makes sense, doesn't it? Yeah. And you can take that progression any way you want to, with women or money or how people live their lives. And so I think the Bible is filled with a lot of wisdoms, especially Proverbs, right? I mean, Proverbs is essentially a whole bunch of people lived before you, and they had, and this is what I've noticed. So listen.
This is what we figured out. Yeah.
So listen. Yeah. Like,
but that's what's cool, right? And so that's that. And so, again, I don't know how deeply you want to dig into this, but that's where it started yesterday, and it dovetails into another topic that I wanted to talk about, which is actually what you had mentioned previously, is the decline of religion in America and maybe even in the world.
Well,
decline of Christianity.
The decline of religious participation or formal religious participation.
Right, because I think
right.
if I remember correctly, the article that I read said something like people that define themselves as spiritual but not subscribing to a specific religion is rising, whereas people that subscribe to specific religions is declining. And I think atheism and agnosticism, I think, have climbed a little bit, but people that, or I guess maybe that is agnosticism. I guess like people that have like maybe agnosticism has gained a lot, atheism has gained a little, perhaps, but yeah, and so this is I think this is the article that I read actually.
Let me find the list of charts at the bottom. Because at the bottom it had a whole series of tables. So
yeah.
Gosh, there's a ton of these. So yeah, trends in religious service, right? But I would be interested in asking you, well, trends in religious service, right? So let's see, 2007, 54%, 50%. You see that dropping. I wish this was extrapolated. I wish this went back a little bit further than 2007, but what do you think is a major contributor to people not attending religious services? Because I to be honest with you, I think even with the and I'm going to just go back to the article. The article did a better job of detailing because there's too many charts. There's 38 pages of charts here. I think
I know what the answer is for me. I don't know what it is for people in general, but I know what it is for me. Basically, if I had to guess, I would say it's because church people can be nutty, like, because for me, if church was like a community, if church was the way that I perceived of church to be, like a community of people where you can feel welcome and where you can sort of all discuss religion and try to get feel closer to God and try to, like that kind of thing. If that existed, I think I would still go to church. But instead, church has become increasingly dogmatic, has become increasingly sort of radical, has become increasingly very kind of culty and just sort of very, very strict and very exclusive and very exclusionist. Like that to me is what is killing religion, is that it just like is this sort of tribalism.
Well,
but,
okay.
Like I said, that's just me.
I want to rephrase that. I don't want to say religion. What's the word? I want to religious ritual. Is that better?
What is causing the decline in religious ritual? What does that mean? Exactly?
Ritual is put on a suit, go to church, sit in church for 2.5 hours, carry a Bible, sing, do songs, and go home. Like that's the religious ritual, right?
Okay.
Because like we grew up with that. Like going Sunday, we drove across town. We went to Southwest Atlanta, like every Sunday, right? Like that was our thing. Like since I was a little kid until like high school, right? So it was just the whole religious ritual of that on every Sunday, right? And that was something that we did, but it didn't necessarily like represent like our true beliefs, because that kind of varied from person to person, right?
So for me, I guess my answer to that would be slightly different, but again, it's more just I can't say this is a general trend, but for me, it was basically about hypocrisy, in that hypocrisy / money, because what ended up happening for my experience in the church was that it seemed like the pastors were making tons of money, and like suddenly I grew up basically, and I guess but where when I was a kid, a church was like a house, looked like a house, like it was basically the size of a house.
Yeah.
And then within my childhood, like by the time I turned 15, churches were like mega churches. That was like where suddenly you had like 1,000 people in a church, like in one building at the same time, and it was just like this massive
Yeah.
building. Like it would take up like, and there would be like concert setups, like
Yeah.
giant screens, and like not just like one. There would be like 3 or 4 rooms of, there would be like the main room and then like these
Yeah.
offshoot rooms, and then there would be the strictly TV rooms.
And you went to a church like that, right?
Yeah, I went to a church like
Where?
that for a while.
Where?
Um,
Is
gosh, I
that
can't remember the name. I
is
can't
that the
remember the
one?
name of
Is
it
that the
now.
one that was in, oh my gosh, like
It was,
you know where my house was, right? Or my dad's house is, right?
yeah,
There's a really
like
big
Smoke Tree back in
Asian
the day.
church behind there. Was it that one or was it a different one?
That was a Chinese church. No, I didn't go to
Oh,
that
okay,
one.
okay.
Or
That was
Taiwanese,
Wayne.
maybe
Okay,
Taiwanese.
okay.
That's where Wayne went. Wayne's family went
Gotcha,
there.
gotcha.
But or maybe I shouldn't use his real name. But at any rate,
Lane.
but at any rate, I went to one that was off of I want to say, gosh, Old Peachtree Road. I want to say, like, so it was basically where so it wasn't near like where you guys lived. It was like, it was, if you kept gosh,
That sounds like Highway 29, Lawrenceville Highway.
yeah, I want to say there was like a road called Old Milton, maybe around there. I can't
Okay.
remember.
Was it
I can't
Gwinnett
remember
County?
specific. I can't
Gwinnett
remember
County, right?
specifically. I think it might have been
Gwinnett,
it might
DeKalb.
have been just past Gwinnett. I think it might have been Fulton. It might have
Oh, okay,
counted
okay,
as
okay,
Fulton.
okay.
I'm not sure. So at any rate, yeah, I went to like one of those mega churches, and yeah, it was like you see like the flat ground, and then you would just see basically like a castle. It looked like a castle
Yeah.
in the middle of like, and it would just be surrounded by a massive parking lot. You would go in, and it was like Mercedes, BMW, and then like, and then like our Nissan Altima or whatever. It would just be like a sea of
Oh yeah,
all these crazy,
yeah.
these crazy
I
cars,
know.
everyone super well dressed. And I would go to this place and I'm just like, what are we doing here? What are we doing here? It seems like everyone here is full of, are just full of themselves, and they are so hypocritical, and they are just so
Well,
fake, and they're clearly like, and it was everything that was counter to what I thought Christianity was, which was about simplicity,
yeah.
about the rich man having a
Well,
difficult time passing
but
through, getting into the kingdom of heaven.
look, and this is one of the things that I feel sorry about. I
The
feel I
prosperity gospel. The
well,
prosperity gospel, frankly, I
dude,
think is what killed religion.
dude, I'm about to go on a rant on that, but I'm not going to do that yet. Like when I grew up, church was community. It was a community thing, right? It was a community participation type thing. So I just to give you an example, right? My grandfather's a preacher. My father's a preacher, right? And so there's this church in South Georgia, Middle Georgia. It's called Wadley Church of God, and my grandfather was the pastor there, right? And we went to Church of God. There's a whole group of Church of God churches in Georgia, and so every summer, all of the kids from the Church of God around the state would go to there for a week, and we spent a week at church there, right? Like a week at church camp there, right? And like we didn't necessarily enjoy all of the ritual church stuff, but it was like a community event. Like it wasn't like we're here to make a bunch of money and we got all these kids, we're going to turn a profit off of these kids. It was like these kids need to get some ritual about not just church, but there's a way that we used to do things and they need to learn how we do things so that they can pass it on, right? And like growing up in that, that is an experience that kids now, they're not going to get because everything is monetized, right? It's everything's monetized. Like, so if there's any big reason I feel that people have stopped going to church, it's because I think people see through it. I think people see through church. They see through prosperity gospel, and particularly black men. Black men see through that shit. Like, you got a black dude up there that's like hemming and hawing and telling black women what they want to hear, and they dump out their middle class earnings, put into the plate so that you can do all this stuff. And he's telling you that there's a good man that's waiting around the corner, and all you got to do is keep praying and believing, praying to God. And all these black dudes like, no, I want a woman that's nice and not overweight and it talks kind to me. And you know, preachers aren't telling them that. They're just taking money and telling them what they want to hear. And then you have all these women in the church that are 40 years old with 2 kids, or 28-year-old, or I should say 28 years old with two kids and not married, or 40 years old, never married, focused on the career. They're looking for men, and they don't have a solution for that. And you have the black men who are looking at the church like, hey, I know what I want, and you're not telling them what they need to hear, because I don't want that. I don't want a woman that's 28 years old with 2 kids. And I don't want a 40-year-old woman who is focused on her career, who's going to treat me like I'm some kind of partner. Like, no, I'm a grown ass man. Like, I want you to make some eggs and sausage for breakfast. And she's going to say, why don't you do it? It's like, well, I don't need her for that. So the church kind of like my parents' church. I'm looking at my parents' church, my grandparents, when we went down to what you call it, man does this, woman does this. Man, grow up, provide for your family. Woman, take care of your man, cook breakfast, iron his clothes, be a helpmeet, all of that. Like, we got that at that camp. But that's not a profitable message now. So you have a lot of these new preachers saying, all you got to do is pray, go to work, and God's going to find you the man that you need. Just put the money in the collection plate. And you got men standing to the side like, you're still going there giving him all your hard-earned money? Okay. I'll see you after the game comes off.
Okay. So you're saying that it's kind of like, so what you're saying is that basically the churches were sort of spreading a progressive message of focus on career. Because I was trying to figure out like what was the connection between the 40-year-old single lady and the 28-year-old with 2 kids, and the message is ultimately
telling them what they want to hear.
Yeah, just like, you know what?
It's just like, you know who Derek Jackson is? Have you followed him? No, he's just like this like whisperer that basically tells black women, like, he has a couple of sayings. He said one like, you are the prize. He said like, only grown men can handle baby mamas or something like that. Like, like you have a kid by another man, and you walking up to a man with conditions, like
it takes a real man to take care of.
That's it. It takes
kids,
a real man
are not his.
Yes, that's it. Right. So these women are getting gassed up with this, and it's like men are like, oh, you're nice and cool and everything. It's like, well, me and my kid are a package deal. It's like, well, whoa,
yeah.
I don't want Insta family. I just want to just date. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Like the thing is though, like that's what bothers me about like liars in general. Like that was another thing I wanted to kind of talk about at some point, or something else that I was going to write about myself, is just like all the different lies that people tell. And I think that's like, one of the key things is, that lie is a lie that's wrapped around a truth, which is, yeah, it is really hard to accept a person with with grown kids. It would be difficult for a man to, to marry into, a life with two children. That is more difficult. Yeah. So it would take, a someone who is particularly special to do that. But the unfortunate reality is there aren't a lot of those dudes around.
Well,
that's, that's
but that's not necessarily the issue. The issue is you have to understand your position, right?
yeah,
Like if I am single middle-aged woman with a child and a man is interested in me, he is doing me a favor and I need to approach him as
with
such,
appreciation. Yeah, yeah,
right? And like if a pastor tells that woman that, he risks offending her. He
yeah.
risks her going to somewhere where they're going to tell her what she wants to hear.
But
And
yeah,
look, it's really easy to tell her, I know that you made some mistakes, but God forgives all your mistakes and God's going to bring you a man. All you got to do is just keep doing what you're doing and you're going to get a man. Right. And so that woman goes out and she doesn't lose weight. She doesn't change her behavior. And she runs into a good man. And the good man is like, you have a child by another. Do you still talk to the father? No, I cut him off because he's not paying child support. And it scares him off like, whoa. You like, this is big thing here. You should be more humble, right?
but yeah, but that's
So,
that to me is, yeah, like that's ultimately,
and
I don't know even.
that's what a church should be teaching.
Yeah,
Go
but the
ahead.
thing is, like, I don't really know what to call that, but ultimately, like, that is it's kind of like it's an irony, but I don't know exactly like how it works. But in reality, it's this idea that whatever you say, this thing that you're talking about, like what the preachers are saying, it reminds me of The Princess Bride. Life is pain. Anyone who says different is selling something. Like, basically, if you are giving money to the church, or if you're giving money to someone, a lot of times it's because they're telling you stuff that is not what you need,
Well, and
right?
look, and
Like, they're
this,
telling you a message. So it's basically you're paying them to hurt you, because, or you are paying to be anesthetized. You're not paying to fix your problem. You're paying to feel better. And that's to me is the problem.
think about the genius of the church model. Think about who's the dude in Houston? What's his name? Joel Osteen. You know who he is, right? The white dude with the
No,
curly hair that's running the mega church, the big mega church. Okay, look, the
yeah.
genius of the and before I keep going, I'll give some other pastors credit. I'll give him credit because there are some things that they say that apply to all of us, and we can use some of those lessons. But the genius of the church model is that they are selling hope, and hope is free. It's like, I mean, even if you look at buying a lottery ticket, that's not free because someone's going to win the lottery. Someone's going to win it. So they're going to have to pay that money to somebody. But churches, they don't have to create a
Yeah.
physical product.
Well,
The
they're selling
product
heaven. They're
is,
selling the product of a
yeah,
happier life.
you're going to be
You know.
better. God's going to
Yeah.
love you. You're going to have a ticket to heaven, whatever that is. All you got to do is
But
give me 10% of your money. And
but to be fair, here's the thing. Here is uh, the part that's, well. So the thing is, the reason why I feel like all this stuff is sort of coming apart. I feel like one huge illustration for me is the rise of business, the rise of or the weaponization of business. Because I had there was a pastor here in Korea that I really liked. I loved his sermons, and there was a falling out at the church. I only went to like a handful, like someone,
yeah.
like I ended up just going to a handful of these sermons. But every time I heard him speak, I was like, wow, this guy's really good. And there was a falling out at the church like a number of years ago, and then, like, since I liked his sermon so much, I looked him up, and I was like, I wonder if that guy's still preaching, because I would love to kind of hear his take on religion, right? And it turned out that he became a like a business guru or a business like someone who like a whatever. And I'm just like, so he just abandoned his religious calling?
This is one of the good things about, and this is why I can't. I went through my agnostic phase, my whatever you can call it, atheist phase, and I at a certain point I had to realize that some of the things that have happened, at least in my life, some of the things that I have gotten away with or whatever have happened to me, like there is some higher being somewhere that says, hey, there's a greater purpose for your life. So whatever, right? You call it the
Right.
force, you call it whatever you want to call it.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I'm still working on what I want to call it. But after I learned that lesson, I realized that, look, some things can't be explained by just luck or serendipity or just
Coincidence.
whatever,
Yeah.
right? And so like once you get past that and you think like, wow, man, like I have a duty to something that's bigger than myself. And I I think that more people in America particularly are not as cynical as we like to think they are. Because like America is this whole thing about get money, get money, get money. And like at least for us, Generation Xers, right? We understand that money doesn't make you a better person and it doesn't solve all of your problems. So even after you get money, you still have to find a way to be a decent person. And that's going to come from something other than like paper chase. And so looking at it from that perspective, you're thinking like there's something that I need and I'm not sure that I'm going to get that from church. So I'm going to figure it out myself. And that's what I think is happening to a lot of our generation, because they're seeing all of this television prosperity gospel stuff and they're saying, I don't want to be a part of that. Like I would rather take my money and just give it directly to someone that needs it. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, like, the thing is, I think what makes it especially difficult now, I don't know if you're speaking specifically to Gen X, but I think what makes what I feel like I think the reason why it's hard to kind of figure out who the cynics are, who the real cynics are, is that a lot of people have money. A lot of high profile people have money. And the people that have money have a way of, broadcasting themselves and making themselves visible.
Yeah.
And the thing that money can do is create tremendous distractions.
Yeah.
So yeah, like they are not happy. They might not be happy or they might not be fulfilled. They may not be satisfied with their lives, but they can create spectacles that seem to represent something positive, like a positive life, even though like they're probably all rotten inside. I don't know if they're rotten inside or if they're happy, if they are truly happy, or if they're just kind of meh all the time, or who knows. But you can spend money to polish everything up. And that's what is really tough, because we are getting so good at polishing things that, yeah, like I don't doubt that there aren't that many sort of cynical or just like really whatever people. I feel like the average person is just sort of in like you don't even see the average person represented anywhere, because I feel like the people with money have taken over all of broadcasting. Like, so like even the people that are popular on YouTube are like basically anyone that's popular on any of these any social media, they're millionaires. Like if you've got an audience, if you've found someone, if you've seen someone, if you're familiar with them, most likely they're making so much money from social media in some capacity that they're a millionaire. And so of course their life's going to seem awesome because they are, whatever, they're like riding on, they're shooting each other with like money and, taking these crazy vacations and this kind of thing. Like, sure, because they're only going, like, they're human just like any other human. They're only going to post the stuff that's positive. They're not going to post like the bad days. They're not going to post
and that leads me to another issue. And I mean, you like 2020, this is like the 1980s on steroids, right? Like we want what we want it now. Social media is not about, it's not about being content, it's not about it's not about exhibiting good qualities, it's not about any of that. It's about, I want what I want and I want it now, right? And look, that doesn't fit well with traditional religion. It fits well with a different interpretation of religion if you choose to change it, but people want what they want and they want it now. And so in this social media age, it's just not going to jive. Like the idea of sacrifice, like I'm going to sacrifice my Sunday because there's someone I owe allegiance to. Like, I'm not saying that I mean, you could choose to go somewhere Sunday, but whatever you choose to do to show some higher form of allegiance, right? There are ways you can do that, whatever you choose. People don't see it that way, right? Like Sunday is my day. All the days are my days. I want to get the most of what I can get because I'm me and I deserve what I deserve. And I think that is the culture in America now. I think that
but
is.
That's why.
I think
but,
then rephrase it. I think that is Western culture.
but that's
Even
all the
if
reason.
Go ahead.
You know. So sorry, but that's the thing. That is what is so striking to me about the first commandment and my contextualization of it, because what you're describing is sort of the key of self-destruction ultimately.
Oh,
Like when you think,
dude, you know what?
like thinking that you're the center of the universe.
Look at what OnlyFans is going to do to a generation of women. Look at what OnlyFans and all of this social media hypersexualization of young women. Think about what it's going to do to these women in 10 years. If any of these women had first of all, if they had a man in their life to say, no, you can't do that. But, you know, men don't have power like that in America like they used to.
I'm curious. Yeah, I'm curious about this. So here's something. I don't know if, I mean, we're both dudes, but I'm curious, like, if you would be able to illuminate this thing. There's a thought that I've had about this sort of hypersexualization of culture that I've always been curious about, and I haven't really found a satisfying answer for it. And so it's basically, to me, it seems like the patriarchy's dream, where you have young women who are willfully sexualizing themselves because they think that's giving them some sort of power. And to me, that is like the complete opposite. It's like basically women marching.
It's going to come full circle. It's going to.
Well, I don't know, but the thing is, it's like, to me, I feel like when I've talked to women about this, it is like they seem convinced that it's about empowerment and it's about seizing power and it's about doing that. And to me, I'm just like, you're being exploited. You're being exploited like that. Well, there's no power there. Well, you're actually
exploiting yourself.
Total reverse.
Yeah. And look. You could say what you want to say. You can say, and this is why I'm going to point back to the church camp that I went to every summer. Yeah. They would always have these things like, oh, girls shouldn't be wearing pants and you should wear dresses. And I remember like some of the girls like, man, you guys are going too far. Like, why can't girls wear shorts? And maybe in a way their thinking was a little bit outdated. But what they were saying is, look, you have something that you should reserve for someone that's very special. And when you do that, you're going to share something very special with one person, and you're going to enjoy a sense of fulfillment from that. But
I think the conversation is so here's the thing. This is what I think is so tough about church, because the difficulty with messages, with powerful messages in general, or with the important messages in general, is that it's all full of nuance.
Yeah.
You know, like you can't, the problem is, like, in a church, in that scenario, it's so hard to explain to a young kid like why, like you said, this concept of just like, you're gonna want to reserve something for your husband and that kind of thing. Like no one's thinking about it in those terms, and
Well,
it's like,
but this and this is where I think the true power of church comes from. Like, of course, there's the teachings and all of that, but the true power of church is the community part of it.
yeah, yeah,
Think about what happens when you go to Sunday school and your teacher is a 55-year-old teacher and you are a 12-year-old, right? So like you're talking about someone that's 2 generations ahead of you, right? And they can say, "Oh, I've experienced this, and it's
yeah, yeah,
best for
yeah.
you to act this way." And like just having that interaction, it just plants the seed in your head. Like, okay, I might want to go out here and act a certain way, but my parents told me not to do that. And this person at Sunday school told me not to do that. And the pastor told me not to do that. I don't know why yet, but there must be some reason, right? And like what's happening now is that there's none of that. Like
Yeah.
they're not getting from anywhere. So you have these young girls that are just all the way wide open.
But
And when
but this
they're going to be
but
35 and they're going to these same girls are going to turn around and say, why was there no one that told me that this is going to be the result of me acting like this in my 20s?
but
Right?
here's
Go ahead.
but this is the important thing. This is what you're talking about, and this is the thing that I think is most important about this whole discussion is that establishing the type of community that you're talking about, like look at what you're saying. It's generational. Like you need this continuum of people for this system to work. You need a continuum of people that all believe sort of in this same notion, you know? And the problem is when you look at, and again, I'm broadly generalizing, but I feel like if you were to just pluck a church from random out of the world, this is my cynicism. It's going to be a rotten church. Like it's not a community. It's going to be some, like the average church that you pull out, it's going to be most likely not about what we're describing or what you're describing. Like it's going to be about what can I get, or how can we keep our congregation so we can keep
Yeah.
the offerings coming in, so we can keep, so we
Yeah.
can buy the new church. It's going to be, it's a business. It's a
It is
business.
business.
It's a great nonprofit business to get into. It's a racket. Like I said, like this guy that I thought was an amazing preacher, he had nothing to do with God. Like in the end, he didn't really care about God. He was just like, all right, well, let me just use these skills and I'm just going to do it in the business world. Like, I'm just like, because I combed his profile and I'm just like, where is the religion? Where is it? He was all about God. Last year, he was all about God. And suddenly this year, he's
Yeah.
like, there, it's zero, nothing. No, even not even in his profile of his history
Yeah.
about last year and like the years that he had served in the church. Like
Well,
maybe
and in a way, look, you can say what you want to say about young people. Young people are a lot of stuff, but they're not stupid. They're not stupid. And a lot of these young people have seen their, we can say
debatable,
parents,
by the
but you
way.
could say parent, and specifically in the Black community, a lot of Black men in particular have been forced to go to church and they watch their mom dump all of this money into the church every week.
Yeah.
They don't have the money, but they find the money, they dump it in the church, and what comes back? And like all it is you go there, you give them money, and they make you feel better for 2 hours out of the week, and then you go back home, your life sucks. You don't your life sucks, and as a grown man or a growing man, you look at your mother and you say, why do you keep giving them all this money? Why don't you just invest it somewhere?
Well, but to
And
be fair,
yeah, go ahead.
but to be fair, I'm not sure, but some people may be aware of that as well. Because there are some people who are just like, maybe, like you said, if their life sucks every day, I would pay to feel good about myself once a week. Like that wouldn't be necessarily the worst investment in the world.
Yeah.
Like so, but so I think there's also kind of putting that in context as well. But yeah,
Well,
like in
but
terms of
again, that works for the older person who's grown up with that. But if you're a
sure.
15-year-old, and you know that you're going to go back home to a house with no lights, no
Yeah.
heat. You're like,
And you're wondering why the
dude,
money's going there. Sure. Yeah.
did the church ever pay our light bill? No. Then why are we giving them money? And so you seeing like, especially black men are checking out the church like, hey, is the church building any schools? Are they bailing people out of jail? Are they starting any business? Are they getting business loans? No. Then why am I going to give my money to that dude so he can drive a Mercedes? You've seen almost.
Well,
I'm not sure. I wonder if this article
what's
broke it down or not, but black male participation in the church. Think about. I mean, you got to think about 2 generations before now, right? You go 1 generation back, that would be my father, right? Go another generation back, that's my grandfather. You're talking about Martin Luther King. That was like the backbone of the black community, right? They were organizing voter registration drives and getting kids registered in the school and petitioning for equal rights, all of that stuff, right? And then in the 80s and 90s, this move to prosperity gospel, and a lot of black dudes just like, no, man, if this is what it is, I'm out. And you're talking about, and I'm talking about people that still read the Bible. People still read the Bible, still believe it, and just say, like, I'll do it without the church. I can't do it this way. There's a lot of that. Like black men still read the Bible, dude. They just don't go to church.
No,
They
but I
don't go
mean
to
that's the
church.
thing. Like, and that's, I mean, yeah. Like for me,
Second
I was
shit.
going to mention 2 things, I guess. But like to address what you just mentioned, like that's that to me, I feel like is why I I'm putting this. It's kind of why I'm taking the journey I'm taking. Is that like I feel like there are a lot of disenchanted people who want to find that pure version of religion or that pure version of community again. Like to me, there's a part of me that's always yearned for this sort of small town feel, but really it's about community.
Yeah.
I want to know my neighbors. I want to care about my neighbors. I want my neighbors to care about me. I want to support my neighbors' businesses and their pursuits and their lives. I want to know their kids. I want to grow up. I want my kids to grow up with their kids. And I want to live in a place where people know who I am and like we can take care of one another.
Yep.
You know? Like that's sort of like my dream. I don't know where that's going to happen for me, but like that's so to me, that's what was so important for me because my wife is very religious. And so we worked really hard, or I tried very hard to find a church for us to go to. And I was just like, no, it's like, even though like, again, like I said, I'm a lapsed Christian or whatever, like, it's just like, it was so hard because I just, in my mind, I'm just like, these people are insincere. These people are crooks. These people are kind of lame, like are fake or who knows. Like there's just like, it was so hard to find a church. And I feel like there's gotta be a bunch of people that are looking for just a church, not not some business, not some like weird, not some weird farm or pyramid scheme kind of thing. So that was the first thing, I guess. But to address the something else that you had mentioned also is uh talk oh gosh, I just forgot what I was gonna say. But what was it? I think but oh, but I think like don't you think like it's coming back? Like don't you
Well,
think
it's
that
coming back. It's just coming back in a different way. Like,
yeah.
okay, so I was going to go in a couple different directions, but I'll get back to what I was thinking earlier later. But look, I mean, I have an uncle on YouTube, right? Or on
Oh really?
Facebook.
Oh no. Oh cool.
Uncle on
Oh.
Facebook. And like, he basically he has a live stream every couple of days where he just does Facebook Live and starts preaching. Like, I, the internet is changing a lot of the rules for a lot of stuff. And like, especially YouTube. I gotta be honest, like I never really saw the benefit in YouTube Premium. Now I see it. Like YouTube Premium is absolutely worth it. Like
Yeah.
if you pay $15 a month, and if there's you want to go down your rabbit hole, you go down the rabbit hole without the commercials. And so like I've figured that is worth it. And one of the things that happens is when I'm interested in something, I can take 2 or 3 hours a day, a week, a month, and I could dive totally into it. And there's no one that can explain the life experience to me better than another person. So I can't get that through television, Netflix, like a bunch of TV editors, but like YouTube gives you, it comes straight from the person's mouth. And I think that's where religion is headed. Not these big ass buildings. It's just like people with these YouTube channels that are doing the same thing that other YouTube people are doing and saying, hey, look, you're not supposed to be nobody's supposed to be getting rich off of this Christ stuff, because Christ wasn't trying to get rich off of it. Like,
Yeah.
Like he was poor. He died poor. He died like a poor dude. Like, so all these dudes that are walking around saying, God wants you to be rich. Like, look, I heard the stat the other day. You know what the average age of a millionaire is in America? 62 years old. 62.
Oh, really?
60. The average millionaire in America is 62 years old, dude.
Wow.
Like, it's not like being a millionaire is not normal. Everyone is not supposed to be a millionaire. So anyone that's gassing you up from the beginning saying God wants you to be a millionaire is BS. You know what percentage of Americans are millionaires? It's like 6%. 6. Like, you see 100 people cut to 50, cut again. 3 out of 50 is what? 1.5 out of 25 is what? I mean, 1 out of 20, 1 out of 22 people are millionaires, and the rest of other people are just regular old people, and they're okay. Like, when people are walking around saying you're supposed to have a Mercedes, and dude, driving a Mercedes, number one, is not going to make you happy. Rich people have problems too, and number two, you spend your whole life trying to get rich. You spend a whole bunch of your life not trying to be better. And
I think, like, yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, as I said, like, for me, that's why I'm sort of exploring these ideas, because especially when it comes to lessons that I want to teach my son,
yeah,
this is the type of stuff that I want to record, that I want to try to put onto paper, that I want to discuss with you,
yeah,
that I want to just kind of be in the ether, because I feel like it's important that if my son encounters it, or at the very least, I'm hopefully going to have these conversations with him.
yeah.
But in the event that he just happens to stumble upon something that I've written, I want him to know that this is the message that I wanted to kind of send to him, is that, like, there are sort of universal moral truths or societal truths,
Yeah.
that if you, again, that are a product of experience, that are a product of living, of life, that, hopefully, even though he could figure it out on his own, hopefully this will accelerate it a bit so that he can avoid some unfortunate sort of detours in life.
Who is it? I don't know if it's Einstein or is maybe Benjamin Franklin. He said, a wise man learns from the mistakes of others. Like, you don't.
I don't know, but yeah,
you simply don't have enough time in life to learn all the mistakes from your own. You don't have enough time. You have too many setbacks. So you're gonna have to you're gonna have to be the kind of person that can look around and say, I don't want to make that mistake. I don't want to make that mistake, and live your life accordingly. Because you're going to make some mistakes, but you can't make all of them.
Well, that was another thing that I was going to mention as well, is going back to this concept of systems and of the reliance on, like, this continuum of people, is that a lot of times, there are communities of people that are just, like, usually the people that you're around, I guess it works both ways, but you usually will think similarly to the people that you are around. or people that are around you will think similarly to you or whatever. And so if you've got a bunch of people that are kind of selfish and are pursuing, like you said, kind of chasing after these same types of goals, chances are the people around you are too. And so you're not going to really be able to learn from them. You know, you're just kind of, you're like, especially now, because of all these echo chambers that people live in, you're really just going to kind of get reinforced with the same ideas over and over again. You're not going to have a chance to kind of to spread things out. And that's what was so powerful about A, diversity in general, but B, this idea of a society where you have this continuum of, like you said, you have old people, you've got some young people that are going through the same thing, but maybe have different parents that are teaching them, in a different way, so that they're kind of learning from each other. And then you've got like these older people, you've got every step, you've got the kids that kind of went through, heard it a few years ago, that had a little bit of experience from there's like, oh yeah, you know what? Yeah, that makes some sense. You've
Well,
got like the young parents that are just dealing with it on their end, and then you got the old people, and like it's just
yeah. Well,
everybody
look,
kind of helps each other.
you do you have a great grandmother that's still alive?
I do. Interestingly enough,
Do
I
you
do.
talk to her? I'm looking at your picture. Do you talk to her regularly
I
or semi
I
regularly?
do. I talk to her. I talk to her pretty regularly. Yeah,
Your mom's mother.
my mom's mom. Yeah.
So I mean, I'm the same, right? My father's mother, right? And look, my grandmother is, I think she's 90 now, 89, and she's super religious, super duper religious. She was a
Oh, okay.
ordained minister, right? Because her husband was ordained minister. They both were.
Hmm.
And look, you can say all you want to about the internet, but this is what my grandma, I mean, I'm gonna see if I can paraphrase it in her words about OnlyFans. Okay,
You talked to her about OnlyFans?
let me like I would see if I can, if someone said like, Grandma, do you understand what OnlyFans is? No, go ahead and tell me. Like, oh well, you can put your pictures online and pictures of movies online, and you could charge people to watch the movie. She's like, good gracious alive. You gonna put your pictures on the internet and people gonna watch you be naked? No, the Lord won't nothing to do with that. No, sir. I, mm, listen. I think that's the devil's work right there. That's exactly what she would say. Like, you're gonna go online and you're gonna get naked and sell your pictures to people that you don't know? No.
so here's
No, don't do
so here
that.
but here's the thing.
And
Like,
that's like a woman that was born 90 years ago would tell you that. Like, no,
well, I
that's
mean,
a
you don't
bad
have to.
idea.
So here's the thing. You don't need to be that person. Like, here's the problem is the same polish that I was talking about before is often a defense as well. So that you feel like you can control your narrative. You feel like you can control like
Yeah.
your image. Like if you're the OnlyFans person, you can make sure that all of your photos look beautiful and all of your all or when everyone and anyone mentions it, or maybe you don't even mention it or whatever in your profile or when you're talking to other people, maybe you never even mention you've got an account or whatever. You can curate that your life in that regard. But the thing is, what is cool about a community. So on the one hand, the thing is, it's like you're what people don't realize is if you curate your life, you're not you're it's like avoiding the problem. You're not solving the problem. You're just avoiding it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like alcoholism, like people who who just tell themselves who self medicate with alcohol and they don't admit that they have a problem. It's the same kind of thing. But on the other side of it, it's like if you lived in a community, you wouldn't be able to hide that kind of stuff. You would actually have to face up to the truth. You would and actually have to deal with actually take the time to deal with whatever damage
Yeah.
is in your life that is that's pushing you because like the thing is
And people will call you on it. And
yeah,
and
exactly.
yeah, and you wouldn't take it personal, right?
I mean, but what's weird is it's such a hard environment right now for these like I feel like we're so far off from being able to do this kind of thing because everything's been pushed to the extreme. Because on the one end, people are so hypersensitive on one end that they, like you said, they're hiding so hard. They're very, very, very good at hiding things. And then on the other end, you've got like extreme bullying. You've got like this notion of just like canceling and extreme bullying. And so like the type of sort of commentary or the type of criticism or critiques, people can't hear them because they automatically think I'm being bullied. And they're already maybe sensitive because they haven't heard enough negative feedback and they don't know how to deal with it themselves.
And look, you want to talk about the brilliance of the Bible. The Bible has some brilliant stories in there. Like it has the story of the prodigal son who did all the crazy stuff, and he thought that his family would not welcome him back, and he was eating with the pigs and eating the slop, and he said, I'm going to go in there, and his father's having he saw his father threw him a big party. Come on, I'm happy to see you. Forget all of that stuff. I accept you back. Or look, the story of Job.
Yeah.
Like Job did everything right and he still suffered. And he's like, well, why am I still suffering? He's like, well, maybe you just don't know the answer yet. And then when he got the answer, and God was like, hey, I want to see how tough you were.
Yeah.
And like those stories, there's a reason I would imagine that those stories are in the Bible, because they tell a story that is timeless. And that's what when I think of the Bible, I think of timeless stories.
See, I love this because what's interesting is when we talked before about religion,
yep,
you gave me the impression that you were out on religion. But like I feel like what you had described earlier as a person who's kind of like still searching, or still like I feel like that's you.
I don't need a church. That's my problem is not Christianity. My problem is the church.
Sure. No, yeah. I would say, yeah, again, I feel like we're sort of on the same wavelength there, where, yeah, I'm a Christian without a church as well. Like,
and look at what the church model kind of, I mean, you're basically saying a person has to get up every week and come up with something interesting, exciting to say. And like, how can you do that every week? That's hard to do. Like,
yeah. That's what I'm saying.
For an hour every day, you got to come up with something riveting that people
Yeah, that's what I was going to say before. Like when you were mentioning about like, some of these shyster sort of evangelical, whatever kind of preachers, I was going to say it's hard work. It's hard. It's they're earning their money. I think they are earning their money because it's not easy.
And look, and you can look at the Black community and you could tell you could see exactly how it works. Black men go through hell in corporate America, just in America in general. Okay. So like there is nobody on the planet that's going to get Black men into a building and tell them something that's going to soothe them an hour or two on a Tuesday, on a Sunday. It's going to say, you know what, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to fight. Like, no, you're just like, hey man, it's hell. I know it's hell. It fucking sucks, but hey, I got to do it. Man up. But, well, like you could take the same Black women and say, I know Black men ain't shit. I know I know that the whole world's against you. You're the least protected women out there, but God's got something for you. God. And like, okay, you know what? Let me dump out these my pockets because this makes me feel good. Because, women are emotional as opposed to men being more logical. Look, you want to get men back in, you want to get Black men in church? Answers, solutions, projects. How are you going to help my life get better? You have a plan for that? Okay, well then I'm here. I got you. What we gonna do? We gonna build a school? We gonna build something together? Yes, I'm with you. But if you're gonna sell me hope, shit, I could buy a lottery ticket for that shit. Don't sell me hope. I don't want. Can't sell me hope. Doesn't work. You can't sell hope. You can't sell hope to grown ass men. Like you can't. Like You got to sell
Well,
men
it
plants.
can't be false hope. It can't be false hope. Like,
And it can't be like after you die, things are going to get better. Like, well,
right.
shit, I
Like
ain't gonna die for damn 25
yeah.
years. I'm gonna
I
be
mean,
here for another 30 years. Shit.
right.
I
I mean,
you have any advice for the next 30 years? Well, before I die? Thank you.
I think,
Yeah.
and it's interesting because I feel like this is a particularly sort of prickly issue for you. I feel like there's a lot of
Well,
there's,
not just me, but just black men. Because like
yeah.
we grew up in the church and like we just saw what it became. Like come
Well,
on. Like
because the experience that you're describing is very different from my experience because it's like what you're talking about is very particular, which is very interesting. But yeah, like it's fascinating to me because I have no idea this was what the dynamic was in churches because uh, for black men because I'm just like I don't know like I never had access to that experience like for me uh, the it was more I guess like the captive audience were were Koreans that wanted to see themselves as pious.
yeah.
And paying the preacher was a way to let them ignore their sins. It's like, look, if I show up to church, if I can call myself a Christian, then I'm a good person. So I'm going to pay so that other people will think I'm a good person, even though I'm a piece of garbage. Like again, just
how how long
generalizing,
how long was church
generalizing.
service? How long was church service usually?
Are you talking about the sermon, or are you talking about the
I'm
whole
talking about
shebang?
from the time that you walked in and service started until the time that you were walking out the door.
I want to say
Like
it was
what time?
generally 2 hours. It was
So
generally 2 hours.
service started at 11, right?
So it depended because the thing is, like with those mega churches, they would usually have like
Yeah,
four
yeah,
services,
yeah.
and
4.
we would generally go to. I want to say we would generally go to the service after lunch. So maybe like
What, one?
1 to 3 maybe.
Oh wow. Okay.
So it was usually about 2 hours because like the sermon itself would usually be an hour, and there'd just be like a lot of, like I said, there'd be like basically there was a concert every week because there'd just be like there'd be all sorts of music and all sorts of other stuff like tons of
Have you
especially for a church that size,
have you ever
announcements,
have you ever gone
special
to a
guests.
non-Korean church?
Yeah, I've been to a few. I've been to a few non-Korean churches,
Like
like
white,
just
black? Which one?
went to like I've gone to like a few black churches, just sort of. Uh, I mean, like just peppered in my life. Like yeah, like I've been to some black churches, some white churches. I've sat in on masses, like Catholic masses. I've sat in on some
Well, good thing
like
about
all sorts of
the
different
good
sort of
thing
rituals and things,
the good thing
just
about
randomly. Yeah.
the good thing about masses didn't take long. It didn't take long. They're like,
Yeah,
boop, bada beep. All right, let's go home.
but
Yeah.
you need to know what
Oh
to
yeah, yeah.
do
They have a whole bunch of ritual, whole
because
bunch of
like
ritual,
yeah,
a whole
it's
lot of
like
ritual.
I'm like, what is this thing on the floor? Like, oh, I'm supposed to kneel on this. Wait, when am I supposed to kneel? Wait, everyone's standing up now. Oh my God, do I sit down? I kneel down? Wait, what's
Yeah,
nobody helps you.
that's
Nobody
right.
tells you what's going on. I was there with a friend and I'm just like, I don't know
Yeah.
what I didn't know I was supposed to do all this stuff. Um, but but yeah, like I mean, but predominantly, like basically all those experiences are more just peppered in. Like I would visit or I would just happen to be in a if I were in a different city or something like that. Um, but uh but yeah, for the most part, like mainly Korean churches, mainly I would say about 50-50, like really small Korean church, like in a
Was there
borrowed.
like a was there like a league, or how should I say, like a series of community churches that kind of like work together?
Not so.
So like a Gwinnett branch and kind a Gwinnett branch and like a, I don't know, like just around Atlanta or around the state. Do you have anything like that?
So okay, so it's a little bit. So there's kind of like two things, I guess. So when I was really young, there was the Lions Club. I don't know if you heard of the Lions Club, I guess, but the Lions Club, even though it was sort of like I didn't like, for me growing up, I didn't realize it was a religious organization itself.
Yeah.
But the Lions Club is I don't know if that's exactly what you're talking about, but it was basically it was really just the Korean community, but they operated through the Lions Club, and all of the people there were kind of, maybe, I think there was a network of churches that kind of worked together. But I think it was more from the outside in, where it was like, it was the Korean community and they were attending these different churches, even though it was already the same community. So like it wasn't so much the union of the churches so much as this was just the Korean community that
Yeah.
went to these churches anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's kind of speaking to, like, when I was growing up, the Korean community itself was very tight knit. There was kind of like this network of Atlanta Koreans.
And
I'm not sure if,
you're talking about like what, mid 80s, early 90s?
yeah, like 80s, 90s, yeah.
Okay.
I guess like mid 70s, right? Like
Because
no,
it sounds like you're
yeah,
suggesting
80s, early 80s, late 90s, yeah.
it sounds like you're suggesting that it wasn't as tight knit at the end as it was then.
So right, it did, because there was, when I was in middle school, so basically I would say middle school into high school. So basically from early to mid 90s, there was sort of an explosion of Korean immigration. And so whereas it used to be kind of like a single community, once all these Koreans came in, it just sort of turned into a bunch of different communities. And that's when the mega church, that was sort of the age of the mega church, because once all those Koreans came in, you had this crazy monolith church, but nobody knew each other.
Well,
and there was like a clear.
What's interesting is you mentioned that to me, and I'll do this being as anonymous as I possibly can. But there's a really popular Korean dude that we went to school with. He was super popular guy. I don't think he was super Korean at the time, or he wasn't super Christian at the time. He was a cool guy, right? And I remember he reached out to me later after high school. I think it was probably when I was going through my whatever phase, and like he asked me like, how were you because I don't know if I came across as the Christian kid in school or not, but like that's where I was trying to do. He's like, how did you do that during high school? Like, how did you do it? And I just remember being really angry. I was like, oh yeah, well, I don't do that anymore because that I was just going through some stuff and I don't believe any of that anymore. Mm-hmm. I almost feel sorry that I came off that way, mm-hmm. But I do remember him reaching out and saying like, when you were young and you were in high school, you were doing all the Christian stuff. Like, how was that? And I just remember being really not angry, but just like it didn't work. Like they told me to do all this stuff and it didn't work. And like I'm looking at all the girls that I like, and they like the hot guys and the bad boys, and they're all those dudes going to use them up, and then it come back to me at 25, 30 and say, I'm ready to settle down. It's like, that's not fair. I don't want that. Like they're supposed to want me now while I'm being a good guy, right? And I just remember it's just like this calculus is wrong. So yeah. Anyways, I remember that.
I don't remember who you're talking about because I was like, there was a cool Korean guy at our school.
Yeah. Tall dude. He was cool. He was a really cool guy. So I don't want to say his name, but he was one of the coolest guys at the school. So
I think I hated that guy.
But the interesting thing is,
if it's the guy I think you're talking about, I hated that guy.
But the thing is, like now he's like he's really Christian guy. He's really, really into it. And the interesting thing about that dynamic is that I have seen that dynamic happen with a lot of Black people. A lot of the people that went all the way to the other side, right? Like just whatever you want to say with it, right? Like having a lot of girls, getting all the way out there, whatever way you're going to say with it. They went all the way to the other side, and then about late 20s, early 30s, they grabbed it to it. Like, Christianity, save me. And like, God forgive me of my sins. wipe away what happened between 18 and 30, restart.
That's the
And I'm
but
like, that's bullshit. I'm not fucking doing that.
no, but
I'm not
that's the
fucking doing that.
appeal.
I'm not fucking doing that shit, man. Like
That is
Amazing
the
Grace, how
appeal,
sweet the
right?
sound. Like, dude, you was raping your slaves. No, Amazing Grace, get the fuck out of here, man.
That's the appeal. That is the. I mean, frankly speaking, and again, I
You
can't
do know the
speak.
story of Amazing Grace, right?
I do not, but I'm assuming it has something to do with what you just said.
Yeah,
Um.
it's a slave owner. A slave owner wrote the song. Slave owner wrote
Oh.
that song. He's like, oh, forgive me for all these years that I was treating these grown ass human beings like chattel and raping
Mm,
my slaves and beating people and killing them. God forgive me. I'm about to die. God forgive me. Like, get the fuck out of here, man. Man, no. Like, someone tries to do good their whole life, and then at the end of their life, they say, like, what is the what's the third commandment? Is don't use my name in vain, right?
right. Yes.
So if you say like you hit your, I remember, I remember we used to make jokes about this at in Sunday schools. Like, so if I live my whole life right, and then I walk in and hit my foot on the edge of a table, it's like, oh shit, fuck, or like, oh God, oh that hurts.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm going to hell for that.
Well,
No,
that was no.
that's
Well,
not
that was my
fair.
thing. But that was my thing, right? When I was, I mean, again, that's classic sort of like young Christian thinking. Because,
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, I was the same way. Where I'm just like, wait, if I murder someone and I lied to my parents, it's the same. We're both going to hell. Like, it's like what?
Oh, you.
That doesn't make any sense to
Well,
me.
how about you see these dudes? They go mow down a school with an AR-15 and they be like, God forgive me, pow. Like,
Hmm.
no. I remember
Well,
I remember thinking this exact thought when I was like 15 or 16 years old. Because I think it was Jeffrey Dahmer. I don't know
hmm,
when was Jeffrey Dahmer? Was that 90s?
I think so. I think
Because
so.
because
Late
I
80s, 90s.
remember
Yeah.
hearing someone say that like, oh, Jeffrey Dahmer before he died or whatever, he like gave his life to the Lord. I was like, I don't want to go to the same heaven he's going to. That no,
Well, but the thing
it's
is, like, that's a whole
stupid.
other can of worms. That's a whole other can of worms because uh, two I guess like two on two counts for me. Number one is I feel like God is smarter than that. So those all those
Yes,
people are
I
still in
do
hell.
believe that.
Those people are those
I
people are in hell. They're
100%
not
believe
fooling
that.
anybody. But the second thing is I also sort of subscribe to the South Park version of heaven, where I think have you seen South Park
Oh
Bigger,
my gosh,
Longer, and Uncut?
is that the movie, right?
Yeah, it's the movie.
I think I've seen it, but it's been a long time.
Well, so what I love about the South Park movie is that when they introduce the concept of heaven and hell, it's like you see people gliding toward heaven, but then you see like a sign up top that says like population like 100. And then, and then the people that are going towards hell, they fall and they go start going towards hell, and then like the sign on top of hell is like population like 500 trillion or something. And the number just keeps going, the number just keeps grinding up, like Gandhi's down there, and who else, like John F. Kennedy's down there. It's so hilarious. It's like it's like trillions and trillions and trillions of people in hell, and like literally I think like less than
Well,
100 or 100
and and
people in heaven.
and look, I think this is one of the evolutions of religion in America. And
Hmm.
when people ask me what religion I am, I prefer to say I'm Buddhist. And
Really?
I'm not saying that
Okay.
I'm not saying that I'm Buddhist because but like you read the Buddhist teachings and it's all about self-improvement. Like
Hmm.
being the best person, moving towards nirvana, moving towards
Hmm.
enlightenment, right? Like
Sure.
that is a lifelong quest. Like anyone that says I have reached enlightenment, they're full of shit. Like you
Hmm.
know it. Like the person that has reached enlightenment would say, I am continually moving towards being the best person I could possibly be.
Hmm.
That person maybe has reached enlightenment. But someone says, like, oh, yeah, I reached enlightenment 2.5 years ago. I'm just cruising now. They're full of shit. Like, that's bullshit.
Hmm.
Like, the life around the world around us is always changing. So that anyone that acts like they have figured it out, they're full of it.
Mm.
So Buddhism gives a better understanding of how I'm supposed to evolve. And so like it has its stories, and some of those stories kind of jive with, other religions, but the whole point of Buddhism is the same as Christianity. Be the best person that you can be. Think about other people. Like be considerate. Like don't be selfish. Think about your effect on the life or the world around you. Consider all of these things when you make your daily pursuits. And it in a way it jives better with like what Christianity is supposed to be, as opposed to, oh, I did all this crazy stuff, God forgive me. Okay, clean slate, boom, let's go. Like,
Well, that's why. I mean, that's the thing. Like that
like
to
clean
me is
slate
why
BS. That drives me
that.
nuts.
Well, the thing is, I don't think it's BS. Like I think it's you have to. The thing is, you have to investigate someone's heart, right? Because if there is true penitence, right? If there's true humility and true sort of revelation, then sure, you know, like but does that happen easily? And, like, no. Like, so yeah, like the dude that, that mows down like a shopping mall
Well,
full of people and then says, hey, God, forgive me, and then puts a bullet to their head. I don't
well,
think
but this.
there's, you know,
Go ahead, go ahead.
I mean, and again, it's not me to say, but that does not make sense to me. Like if that were like if so for example, if it were confirmed to me, if someone if it were confirmed to me that Jeffrey Dahmer was in heaven because he
Yeah,
accepted Jesus Christ as his personal savior before he died,
yeah.
then
Like, why am I
then
going there?
I
I don't want to go
yeah,
there.
then I'd be like,
Can I go somewhere
that
else?
would yeah, that'd be like, man, that seems like a weird system, you know?
Yeah.
Um but it's possible that it was because, like, if it was because of us, if I knew for a fact that he had gamed the system to get in to heaven, then I'd be
Yeah,
like, okay,
and
this is nonsense.
that's my issue with it, is that the problem with that forgiveness thing is that everyone that's loosely affiliated with Christianity knows that it's there. So like, it's
But
one
this,
thing.
I
It's
mean,
one thing when you do a bunch of bad stuff and you don't know that there's a get out of jail free card, but when you know there's one, you act totally different, right?
but here's the thing though. This is what I think is fascinating, and in terms of just like religious talk. One topic that I feel like is very is one of the most fascinating talks for me is the talk about forgiveness with Christians, because what is the duty and what is the limitation of forgiveness? Like, is it like Ned Flanders, where like Homer is like almost murdering him and being a doormat, and it's just like, like just forgive. Oh, no matter what. Okay, neighbor, you stole all my stuff. Okay, I forgive you. Oh, you're, whatever. You
Yeah.
almost killed my children. Oh, okay, I forgive you. Like that to me is really odd. You know, like, well, it's a two double-edged sword, because on the one hand, it's just like, man, that is like a super chump. But then on the other hand, it's like you have to be supremely strong to be able to truly forgive someone, in these sorts of extreme situations. And it's just like, because so it's simultaneously like laughable, but also like awesome. Just like, whoa, that's incredible. And that's the thing that's hard for me to reconcile in my head, because to me, it's like, there's got to be a limit, right? You can't forgive every time, right? Like, there must be something, because logically it doesn't seem possible to just always be able to forgive. And
Well,
that's just
always,
something
yeah,
that
always is
that
tough, right?
that's to me, that's kind of what we're talking about in terms of enlightenment, or going to heaven, or being like
Yeah,
Jesus like, or whatever.
yeah.
It's something that
That's a
an
book that I
ideal.
damn it. That's a book that I read.
Yeah, it's an ideal that you strive for that you never achieve.
Well,
You know,
and that's one of the issues again with Christianity is it makes it too convenient. Like forgiveness, forgiving is a continual process.
right?
So I did a lot of crazy stuff. I have to change who I am so that I can forgive myself as opposed to, oh, blank slate, click on, click off, boom. All right, clean slate, let's go. Like that idea, that doesn't register with me. And I would imagine it doesn't
But
register with a lot of people, right?
the thing is, it's like I would question, and again, I don't know enough about the Bible. I don't know enough about Christianity to speak on this, but I'm
There it
curious.
is.
Like, is that
Good book I read. Can you see that?
I can't let it go? I
Wow.
guess.
Good grief. Yes,
But
TD. You know who TD Jakes is?
I cannot read the TD
Okay.
what?
TD
I can't read
Jakes.
it. TD Jakes. Oh wait. Yeah. TD
Yeah, TD
Jakes.
Jakes. And like, look, like this is one of the reasons why I talk about how I can't say that I'm 100% any religion or the other is because there some of these guys, TD Jakes, when I was going through like my separation and all of that, and I was really angry. Like I want revenge, all of that stuff. He said he kind of talks about how like if you still want like retribution, that's a you issue. That's not a someone else issue. And like even though he runs a mega church, like he has actually had this one sermon because he knows his position. And okay, you could say what you want to say about mega churches, but he knows that his church is mostly full of, women, black women in particular. He had
Hmm.
this one sermon where he said, don't take my sermon and go whip your man at home across the head with what I'm telling you.
Hmm.
That's the man of that house. That you need to honor that man.
Hmm.
Like he told the women, like, don't take these words I'm saying here. Don't go back to your house with your husband watching football and say,
Hmm.
TD Jake said you need to like don't do that. And like that's like the why it's such a moving target, right?
Hmm.
Like you can't say like this is good, this is bad. I want to do this, I want to do that. You should go to church, you shouldn't go to church. Because even TD Jakes understands his reach is bigger than just the people that go to his church on Sunday. Because his stuff is on YouTube. It's all across social media. So
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. It's hard for me to, yeah, because the thing to me is like I feel like the natural mechanism is that once you get to a certain level of, I'm always skeptical of people who have big audiences because and big anything big because I feel like the system is such that uh, those people cannot maintain perspective and those companies cannot survive like those like you can't help but break down at a certain level. So like I appreciate that. I think that's cool.
yeah.
um and yeah, I am familiar with him because I remember I've seen some quotes from him
Yeah.
and in the past, but like but I think that yeah, I mean
There it is.
the part that I the part about religion itself, and we sort of touched upon this the first time or earlier, is that a lot of the things that I believe, a lot of the things that I believe, I have to be careful that is it the religion that is teaching it, or is it a person interpreting what they think or imposing their own sort of belief system onto me, in church? Because, this idea of the instant forgiveness, that to me sounds
That sounds very
that
modern. That sounds like a
yeah,
very
that
modern
that
idea.
doesn't that does not seem consistent
Yeah.
with like which verse says that, what which translation, like where like what, where does it say, like what some of the other stories, some of the other things, a lot of the odd, sort of notions that people extract from the Bible and try to turn those into lessons. Like,
Yeah.
where does it say? Is it concrete? Like, is it pretty black and white? Like, that's what it is? Like, or is it an allegory? Is it is it possibly a metaphor? Is it possibly something else? Like, does it have to be interpreted the way that you need to say? And maybe that's a cop out. Maybe I'm trying to, rationalize after the fact. But I feel like it's important to scrutinize these things, especially if
Well,
it has to do with
and
something important, like
and
whether it be forgiveness or whatever,
and
or
look,
getting into heaven, for
there
example.
and there is, when you deal with, I would say Catholicism, it's included, but Christianity in particular, you have to look at it in terms of the frame of reference into which it was introduced to non-white people, right? Like Christianity was filtered through the European church. So there's a time when non-landowners, non-females, whatever, they didn't have the same rights as other, they didn't have the ability to be Christian, right? So just like the United States, right? Some people were Americans and some people were just whatever you want to call
Yeah.
them. And Christianity went through the same thing, to where, okay, landowning white males are Christians. Okay, now white males are Christians. Okay, uh, anyone that's a practicer is a Christian. And then you bring that over to America, and okay, well, Christianity is a way that you control your slaves, and it justifies being able to kill people that don't accept the doctrine as it is. So if you introduce the Bible to Native Americans and they don't accept it, they're heathens, you kill them. You take it to Africa, you take it to Asia, they don't accept it, then they're heathens, forget about them. So through that lens, we are learning Christianity, and certainly Jesus wasn't walking around thinking that. So you have to see through that. You got to see through that, right? Like,
I thought you were gonna say Jesus. I thought you were gonna say Jesus wasn't white.
well, Jesus was. I first of all, the idea of a white is a very, very recent construct. Like,
Right.
a white is like an idea that's like 500 years old, right? Like, if you look at Roman history, they didn't say, oh, white emperor, half white emperor, partially. They didn't do that. Like, that's really recent, right? Cameras there. Like, so, whatever you want to say about Jesus,
No, I mean,
he
I
might
was
be
just,
white, he might be part white, mulatto, whatever. Like, he wasn't walking around saying you got to do it this way, and people this shade of color, they good, but people is this shade of color. He wasn't doing all of that. He just like, hey, listen, be a good dude, be decent, care about other folks. What color he was, whatever. We could debate that, but he wasn't out here saying like, hey man, we trying to get these ties up because we trying to come up. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm about that money. Like, that's not what he was talking about. Yeah. But that whole thing went through, Western Europe, and it became what it became, and you have to see Christianity through that.
Yeah.
So like in that whole 10% tithes and offerings and all that stuff, okay, give some money to the church, I got you. But that's not, Jesus wasn't walking around talking about, I need a tenth of y'all money, dog. Come on, what's up?
Yeah.
Like, he's like, before I divide these loaves and fish into food for everybody to eat, hey, 10%, y'all. Like, he didn't do that.
I mean, that's the thing. Like, again, like for me, that's the important distinction to make. The separation of churches from religion, the separation of people versus God. Because because the thing is, and going back again, originally to this concept of universal truths, is that one of the reasons why I appreciate the Bible is that you're looking at so many different authors, looking at so many different interpretations, and over such a long period of time with different languages, but there are threads. There are threads of consistency. You know, there are threads that continue on. Again, like the Ricky Gervais test, there the individual stories might disappear, right? But there are key components, essential components that are universal. And again, I also went through a phase, and I guess I'm maybe still in the phase of trying, it's just of sort of looking across religions as well. It's like, okay, what are the commonalities of Islam and being Sikh and being Christian and being Buddhist and being like, what are all these different things, like what are they all trying to do? Is the God that they are referring to the same God? Is it the same force, or is it the same idea? Like, are there consistent messages? Is there a universal message? Is there a universal moral message that can be distilled from all of this? And that's kind of what I've been searching for, because in my own life, I just sort of deconstructed religion. So like I started out as Christian, and then I was just like, I'm atheist, and then agnostic. And then through my agnosticism, I was just like, okay, well, let me,
Yeah.
same as you. I feel like there have been a number of episodes in my life that I cannot chalk up to
That's right.
random chance.
That's right.
Random, to coincidence or something. It's just like, this is some
this is
like cosmic shit. This
Yeah.
is some cosmic shit. Like you can't explain it. Like it's not. It's like it's yeah. So for me, I'm just like, okay, then there has to be something there. There has to be something there. And so for me, coming from that place, it's been this idea of, what are the threads? What are those threads? And how do those things make sense to me? And do they make sense to me? And that's why, like, the thing is, like, and it had been long dormant, frankly. Like, for a long time, I hadn't really thought too much about religion. Um, I hadn't thought too deeply about religion. But then, like I said yesterday, it just struck me, and I forgot what the thought process was. But I was just like, oh yeah, the first commandment, maybe this is what it means. And then it just sort of opened up a lot of possibilities, and the more I pull at it, the more it came together as opposed to falling apart. And I'm just like, oh, okay, this is cool. And if it makes sense to me, that I know that means absolutely nothing, who cares?
Yeah.
But it's cool to me. Like, that's the thing. So for me, I'm just like, oh yeah, okay, there's something there. And so I'm hopefully gonna run with it and see where it leads me. And then if it turns into a book, into an ebook, then maybe I can sell it. Maybe I can run my own super church one day, mega church one day.
No, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. But
maybe I can talk in front of a bunch of black women and tell them how to treat their men.
I almost wish that I could bring I wish I could Zoom call my dad, because my dad is, he's electrical engineer and all that, but he could just rattle off like, oh yeah, you need to check this verse in this book. It talks about this, and he just go really in depth into it. You know what? I might actually call him tomorrow and tell him about this. But look, like, one of the things that I learned from my father is that he's really good at saying, look, there's this whole biblical stuff, but what the point of the Bible is that there are basic human truths about how humans should act. And these human truths are as old as humans.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what year it is or what kind of technology there is. And he actually used this to describe a prior president. I'll just say it that way. And he just said that there's a certain way that you should treat people. You shouldn't lie. You should be honest. You should be upfront with people. You shouldn't use people for your own purposes. And there are reasons why you shouldn't do those things. And those reasons are as old as we are as people.
Yeah.
And so you could walk around and say, I'm going to break this rule, I'm going to break that rule, but say what you want to. I, I think you know who I'm talking about, but like,
Right.
look, like you've seen funerals before, right? You like a funeral of like a great person and a rich person. They're not the same, right? Like you could see a great person. I remember seeing my grandfather's funeral, and it was the biggest funeral the biggest funeral I had ever seen. My grandfather, he dropped out of school in fourth grade. Like he was just a guy, but he had an amazing an influence on a whole bunch of people. And then you see the same situation happen with someone who's just he made a lot of money, whatever, but he didn't really affect anyone's life, and he just kind of did his own thing, and it's just like a whole thing, and you can see the difference, right? And like there's something about that, right? Like even if the funeral's not big, like you'll have people saying like I remember when my mom passed away, right? Like their funeral was modest, but I just remember so many people saying like, "Oh man, I remember when she did this and this and this, and I really appreciated it," right? Or I remember this time so and such, and she's just such a sweet person, and I really like those like personal connections. They were there, right?
Well, this is, I mean, sorry to interrupt, but like, I think what you're talking about is also a really underrated gauge for a person's life.
Yeah.
Put the people that are in your life at different stages together. Do they get along? Can't like are they sharing cool stories? Are they having conversations? Are they engaged? Or are you hiding? Or are they like leaving? Like, or are they like uncomfortable? Or do you want them separated? Like like that to me, I imagine like that, what an amazing way to just sort of gauge your life. Because like, okay, well, man, if I were to die today, because it's not even just about that, but like, yeah, if I were to die today, the people that showed up together, how would they be able to how would they interact with one another? you
Oh,
know would
yeah.
it be strange, like, oh my gosh, I had two families coming together? Like, what, you had
Yeah.
kids with a whole other like that whole thing.
and
It's just like,
and that used to happen. That used to happen.
yeah, yeah, but that's the thing. It's like what would be the stories that they shared? Would they connect? Because yeah, like I think that again, I feel like that is community, right?
Well,
Like
but look,
around
you
you.
heard about DMX, right? You saw DMX. He passed away,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Did you see his funeral? Did you see that at
Well, I saw
Barclays
clips. Yeah, I saw clips of it.
Center? And look, you could say like he was rapper and all that stuff, but like what he did
By
really
all accounts, he was a really good dude.
it
Really, really, really
affected
good dude.
people, and
Yeah.
not only just his music, but like his Christian
Who he,
turn,
yeah, who
like
he was as a person.
his Christian turn when he went from like have you seen the video, like the YouTube videos of him like praying?
No, 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 no.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
Oh, really?
He's like rapping while he's like, Lord, I just want to tell you that we're coming together, and we're coming together because not just because of the weather, but because we want to let you know that whether or not you were with us or not. I just think it's amazing. You hear him rapping while he's praying. It's like, oh my gosh, what if he had done this since the beginning? It's amazing. Like it's just, I mean, it's amazing. You hear him like praying and rhyming, and it's just like, wow. Like you could tell like his talent affected not just like people that wanted to feel that part of his upbringing, but like when he did a Christian thing, and like there were people that like hip hop and Christianity, and it's just like whoa, this is whoa, and like that touched people, right? And like you can't quantify that, right? That's the human experience, right? Like Like some people are going to have that special something, and you could quantify heaven, hell, all that, but that DMX is closer to modern day Christianity than the church is. I'll put it that way,
Hmm.
because he was all the way out there, like 14-year-old kid, like dealing with family problems. The person he trusts the most introduces him to crack, and he starts smoking crack at 14, and and he goes through his young adolescence doing that, and he becomes a crazy, incredible rap star, and just creates a whole genre of whatever. And then he goes through his ups and downs, and he comes out others on the other side, and the Christianity's there, and it's like people identify with that, man. And that, I think, is more DMX is closer to American Christianity than the church is. I'll put it that way. For young kids now, DMX is closer to the church than American church is. And I would
Hmm.
imagine that the great number of churches did not, on the day that after he died, did not mention, oh, DMX, he was a true Christian. I would imagine that most churches didn't even bring that up. But I can guarantee you, there are a large number of young kids that were watching that live stream saying, oh man, that's what I'm talking about. And
But that's what I'm saying too.
and
Is
and
that
like
like,
the dudes, the new Christianity guys that tap into that, they're going to be the new leaders of this. Go ahead.
but that's what I'm saying in terms of recontextualizing and reinterpreting what Christianity is. Because when we had talked earlier about why is Christianity in decline, I think that's what I was mentioning in terms of this idea of exclusionary like practice where you feel like you are like the church doesn't want a DMX. The church doesn't want someone that doesn't seem pure already. Like it's this uh, this idea that Christianity is about piety, is about purity, it's about
Or or
and it's
in
just
the
like
in a
no,
package that we can control or we can
right, and it's
manipulate
just
to
like
our
no,
advantage.
no, it's not about ignorance. It's not about not questioning. In my mind, at least, again, and maybe what I'm talking about myself is not Christianity, to me the way of living is not that way. It is the open embrace, which seems to be what the message of Christianity is being open to everyone and being not only that, but respecting the weakest, respecting the lowest of people, and in the same way that you honor like the greatest people, and that's the part that I think is most important and what I think is ignored the most in this age of prosperity gospel where it's just like rich people being rich is great and only care about rich people. Like it's like that's the thing that bugs me so much about it, because it's like it's more about how can we care about the lowest people, the weakest people, the most vulnerable people, and
And
how do we hold
and
on to the society?
and the people that don't agree with Christianity,
Yeah,
the people that
exactly.
are the people that are in China or in India or in
Yeah,
Japan that are or in Africa, they're like, hey, I'm a Muslim. Like,
yeah.
what, you gonna send bombers over here and bomb us into oblivion? Because if it's that, then we got to fight. But if you're gonna say, I respect your differences, but these are our commonalities, you might have something there. But I mean,
Because the other part of it too, and this is going back to what we were talking about with regard to like the OnlyFans thing, is the freedom to explore those paths, right? You can take the roundabout route, and then you can still be forgiven. Then you can still be pulled in. Again, it's problematic about the last minute. I believe in God.
yeah,
Jesus, my personal savior. Blammo. But in terms of you live the life, kind of like the guy you're talking about. Maybe he made a ton of mistakes in high school or before high school, and then he discovered
Yeah.
Christianity later, and then it just really gripped him. Maybe it's sincere. I'm hoping it's sincere. In my mind, it's nonsense. It's probably nonsense. I think
Well,
he's probably a piece of
and
garbage.
that's one of the problems. That's one of the problems I think that Christianity. I think this is one of the places where Christianity loses to Buddhism. Like Buddhism says you should be trying every day. Like you don't get days off, right? Christianity says when you reach that point where like, you know what, I've been messing up, I got to change now. Okay, you're good. You're good. Let's start changing. Like that dichotomy, I think that's for me as a rational person, like as a scientist, I have an issue with that. Like if you should be trying every day that you wake up to be the best person you could be on that given day.
But
And
this is the dangerous thing. Like what you're talking about, and this is why I think that whole first commandment thing is so profound. One of the reasons why it's so kind of near and dear to me is um, the concept of surrender, the concept of basically the
knowing your
universe,
place.
right? The universe, because the thing is, what you're talking about, it's like, and again, I'm not saying this is what you're saying, but it comes dangerously close to I can solve all my problems. If I keep working at it, I can solve all my problems. And for me, I experienced one of those sort of odd you know sort of divine moments was something like this, where I was in a situation where I was convinced like I was doing everything right, and I don't understand why I'm not succeeding here. And I'm just like, what is going on? Like I'm following all the rules. I'm doing this in this way. I feel like everything I'm doing makes sense. And I'm just like, why do I keep failing? Why do I keep failing here? And it was so frustrating. And then weirdly enough, I randomly went to see this sermon. I went to church randomly, and the sermon was about the literal message was sometimes God will make things impossible for you so that you have no choice but to surrender. But to so he'll make to make you think like, you know what, you can't do everything. You need to turn to God, or you need to accept that you can be powerless. And that was literally what happened. Like I said, I was having this struggle where I'm just like, why can't I'm doing everything right. Why is this not happening? Randomly go to church. The pastor was just like, sometimes God, he's looking directly at me. He's like, sometimes God will make things impossible
Oh,
for you.
this sounds like Color Purple. Like you can't sleep at night, and you wonder why. Maybe God is trying to tell you something.
Right. But that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. Like, and so,
Yeah.
but that was the message. And it was interesting because that was specifically the message that was being taught. It's just like, look, you know, stop relying so much on yourself. Because once you start believing that you can solve all your problems, you are as far away from God as you can possibly be. It's like you have to remember that God, sometimes God will make things impossible for you so that you will turn to God.
And I'll go two directions on that one. One thing is we might think we want something that we don't really want.
Sure, absolutely.
So like
Absolutely.
sometimes we might run into like this impossible, I can't do it, and maybe the reason you're running into that is because that's not what you're
It's the
supposed to
wrong
be
way.
doing
Right.
in the first place.
Right.
Another thing is that, and this is one of the things about the irrationality of religion that is actually a good thing, is that if you think you're going to do something that's really on a large magnitude of scale of amazing, great, whatever, there's an amount of irrational faith that you have to have, or you can't do it. Like,
sure,
if you're a young kid in the ghetto and you say, I'm going to be an NBA basketball player, like there's a way that you have to think to get past all the other kids that think that, for you to be one of that kid that if you are or what's his name? Jeff Bezos sitting at a doggone desk saying with a little banner saying Amazon.com, thinking, I'm going to be the premier seller of books in the world with this website. That thought is so irrational that if you don't have, quote unquote, the faith of a mustard seed, you can't do it. So I that's not scientific.
But that's the fine line,
Again,
right?
yeah.
That's the fine line. There's a fine line between sort of like psychosis and and faith, the an ultimate faith, because some people, like you said, they can sort of cheat their way or psych their way into the kind of success you're talking about just by being insane, by basically being so egomaniacal or so narcissistic, you know. Like you look at the person that shall not be named, I guess, the president that shall not be named. You can delude yourself to a certain level of success, but I feel like the real successful people, you know, are the ones that are able to maintain a level of humility, the ones that can push to the edges, but can still find their way back, or that are still rooted in somehow to reality, or they're grounded in some capacity. And I think that's the important thing, you know, whether it be religion or community or, or some other, their spouses, or who knows, like whatever the connection is to their friends, their circle, like there's some way that they can maintain perspective. And that's what sort of separates them from like the
Well,
the
but
egomaniacs.
that is the beauty of the human experience, is that
Yeah.
the grounding the grounding brings you back, and then you could relook at what you're trying to do. Because let's just consider Jeff Bezos again, right? Jeff Bezos, he's sitting in some garage somewhere thinking, I'm going to build this all end all be a website that's going to be the biggest book selling website in the world. And like he could probably program it, and it's like, you know, okay, I got it. It's done. Like, why am I not selling books? And he goes, sits down, and he talks to his wife or whatever, and it's like, are you sure that books are what people want to buy? And then he goes back and say, well, what if I change it so that I'm selling other stuff? Like that whole thing, right? Like he might have just,
Well,
yeah, like he might
I
just
was
be
gonna
like,
say like the
this is what I think is going to work. You get regrounded, and you're like, oh, you know what? Maybe it's not this, it's this, right? But
well, I think the hilarious thing, it's like we talked about this example in the past, but I think the most hilarious thing about Jeff Bezos is he got divorced and he lost 70 billion dollars or whatever. Like, and and then he got it back, right? He got it back, in crazy stock valuation. But at the end of the day, it's like the Mandela thing, right? Like he couldn't get he couldn't get broken by a South African prison, but he couldn't take living with his wife, like he couldn't survive living with his wife, and so there is that still sort of inherent like personal aspect where it's like, okay, you're the richest man on the planet, you're the richest man in all of history, but you couldn't make things work with your wife. Maybe he didn't want to. Maybe he didn't want to, but it's just like it's interesting. It's like, okay, well, he had to give up a huge chunk of his fortune to settle. Like he couldn't make it work. All the money in the world couldn't make it work. Couldn't make her stay.
well, I
You know.
what again? I used to be a super idealistic person, but the problem with ideals is that the world doesn't run on ideals. It runs on realist. It runs on what's real. So
Sure.
like, I mean, to say that his marriage failed due to his father, I mean, one way or the other, his wife, if she really wanted to stay there, she could say, you know what, you're Jeff Bezos and I love you and you did all that crazy stuff, but I'm still here. Or She could have been like George Lucas' wife and said, you know what, you're making the greatest movie, science fiction movie ever, but I fell in love with this dude over here. I'm leaving. So
But I mean, again, but what I'm saying is
yeah,
that is the reality check, right?
yes, yeah,
That
yeah.
is the
That's
grounded. That's the
yeah,
ground. Whether it worked or not,
yeah.
like that is the reality check. Is that there are reminders that there are things that you cannot purchase,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Of
Whether
course.
you want them or not, right? It's like the richest man in the world. He had to pay to get rid of his wife. There wasn't enough money for her to stay. Like again, assuming he even wanted her to stay, but it's just like that's the thing. It's like you have there are limitations. There are limitations to all these things, and that's what the universe tells us. That's what the universe teaches us. That's the this universal the fundamentally, like you said, on a long enough timeline, you see this is how this is part of the mechanism of the universe of behavior. You cannot treat people in this way regardless of how much money you have. It's going to come back to bite you. You can't sexually harass people for forever. Like maybe you can do it as an individual, but if that becomes the trend, then it's going to bubble up, and then there's going to be a backlash, and then suddenly we're going to get
Yeah.
me too'd, and then there's going to be maybe a backlash to that, and so yeah, like that's the
Well,
system.
and I I want to speak on this a little bit, and I know it's a little bit dangerous, but I think I think I think even for women right now, I think they're in a position now where they have more power than they have ever had, right? So
Sure, I think
so
that's
so
accurate.
they're learning real time, like
How to
how to
deal with power.
wield the power. So
Yeah.
so like you're seeing like Andrew Cuomo, like I don't know, I don't think he like pinned anybody down and sexually assaulted them. I don't know if he, I don't think he did that. I think he probably did some things that were probably inappropriate and all that. I get that, but this is like there's the like okay, the guy did something, he made you feel inappropriate. So what's the other extreme? It's guys walk around at work like robots, like I can't be in a room alone with a woman. No, 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 and they race out of the room, right? Like because that's the other extreme of that, right? So
Well, I would argue that, or I would extrapolate to say the average person has not had as much power as they have now. You know,
average person or
like
average person or average woman?
the average person, because like I would actually say the average dumb person.
Okay,
Because the average dumb person has never had the ability to affect the world. Like it used to be, if you were a nobody, you
you're
would
just
just throw
nobody.
rocks. You would throw rocks and you would yell at the clouds, and that's it. But now you can actually talk to the president. You can actually talk to celebrities. You can go directly into people's lives and touch them,
Yeah,
and you can speak to like that's unprecedented. Like I could write a message. I mean, in like it's becoming a little bit more filtered now, but if I choose any person in the world that has like a Facebook account or an Instagram, I could talk directly to them,
mm-hmm.
you know, and there's a chance, a non-zero chance that they would respond,
Mm-hmm.
depending on how I reacted to them or what I said to them, and that's insane. And then you talk about all these other mechanisms of whether it be like uh, taking advantage of algorithms or
Mm-hmm.
YouTube or all these different platforms. All these YouTube stars, a lot of them morons. They're not extraordinary in any way, except that in some business capacity or some
Yeah,
what whatever.
their message resonates. Yeah,
Who knows, right? So the fact that these are people that have power and that these are the people that have voices, this is to me the great experiment in terms of, yeah. And then you couple that with a lot of these larger movements and a lot like abuses by big institutions that have caused movements, and suddenly these people that have random
or
power.
yeah, yeah, exactly, or like my life doesn't matter, but what if I say that this person did something to me. I'm at,
Sure. Then there's that too,
I'm
right?
instant victim. I get a book deal, I get famous, and I can retire, right?
Right.
So like
Yeah.
so you have that, yeah. You haven't so that yeah, yeah.
So to me, it's like it is. It's not an. It's basically it's not an unreasonable thing. It's a natural byproduct of letting a average person, which I would say is a moron, power, like an unprecedented amount of power.
More.
And what do they do with it?
How
Like
smart
and
how smart or how stupid is the average person? Does the
I
average
think
person does the how many world capital cities does the average person know?
I mean the fact that like again the fact that a so two things I guess statistics the fact that there is, if I remember correctly, again, I don't know the exact number, but the fact that there's like over 10% of the population that believes that the world is
Still
flat,
flat, yeah.
um, somewhere north of 10%, which is absurd to me.
Yeah.
And then the fact that, what is it? 40, is it 70 million? 70 million people voted for the president that shall not be named after all of the evidence,
Oh my
after
gosh.
after 4 years of evidence, um, lets me believe that
Yeah.
definitely the average American is a moron, and that the average, um, and lets me believe that like the average person is probably less intelligent than I thought they were previously, which was pretty low anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, like the thing is, it's like, and the third sort of anecdotal piece of evidence is that the average worker that you encounter is incompetent. Like the default is that the person that you encounter that's doing any job is incompetent at that job. Um, so that's that. Those are my three sort of those are my three anecdotal like
And
you
dude,
know
that's not just America, dude. That's
yeah
around the world, dude.
sure
Seriously.
no absolutely yeah
Especially with the
like in terms of the
smartphone.
the election that's just
The
America but
smartphone
like
has made people stupid.
yeah is in terms of like the whole incompetence thing the fact that the average person that you encounter in any job is incompetent at that job is to me as much anecdotal evidence as you need that the average person is dumb but again not bad but just dumb just like that's the thing and like so for me that's why I have no problem saying like yeah like what was it? The other thing, it's just like, and this is again not an indictment, but I remember hearing Katy Perry, the singing artist. Have you ever heard her talk about anything?
I mean, I've seen her on Sesame Street.
So she's a great songwriter singer, I guess. Like I think I like a lot of her music, but I remember seeing an interview. I can't remember who was interviewing her, but I could not believe that she was I don't know how old she is now or how old she was during the interview, but I'm just like, she was talking probably not much more advanced than my child, who's like 3 years old. The complexity of her thoughts and the way that she was relaying them was not that much
Well,
more
but I mean,
sophisticated than my kid.
America has become style over substance, and style over substance is great
Yeah.
when you only care about how it looks. But the thing is, we all grow up. We all
Yeah.
grow up. We get older, and
But this is
there's a time when you don't want McDonald's. You want a steak. Like you want a good steak. There's a time where you don't want a flashy car. You want a good car.
but this
So
is the danger. This is the danger. Going back to this idea of legacy and continuum of people in society, is we are I feel like in dangerous proximity to a point where we are losing contact with appreciating what wisdom is. Like I feel like if we narrow this, if we widen this gap too much, then the average person is not going to be able to understand wisdom if they hear it. You know, like like right now we're in a situation where, you know what, if even with these sort of dumb people that are in power, or dumb people that have influence, or dumb people that just exist, if you give them real wisdom, they could still get it. But I feel like,
hopefully.
but I feel like we're right on the edge. We're right on the edge of of a dissonance where, like, if someone heard wisdom, they're just like, nah, no,
Well,
old man.
again, like one of the I mean, I think one of the big problems with America now is pride. I think people are too prideful. Like,
Yeah.
there's a pride in not wanting to admit that you're wrong. And
Yeah.
look, and this is. I mean, I actually play this game on. I can't talk too much longer, but I play this game with Facebook sometimes, right?
Mm.
And I'll post the what if.
You are a prolific poster, by the way. I'm
Yeah.
surprised you're able to just put
Sometimes
stuff
I
all
will
the time.
post something that's kind of like the tread is going this direction, and I'll just post something the other direction, and I just want to see how people can process it. Like, no, it's got to be this way or the highway. Like the one post about the principal paddling the girl, right? And like everyone's just like, it's like, no, you couldn't paddle the girl. No. And of course, you don't want your kid to get paddled at school. No one wants that. But what was behavior of the kid before that happened? Like, what if this kid was just a straight ass for like 2 or 3 weeks, and they over and over, like, hey, listen, if you don't straighten up, we're gonna have to do something. You don't straighten up, we're gonna have to do something.
She threatened the principal with a gun.
Oh yeah, and then like one day the principal's like, hey, listen, that's enough. And then the mom shows up one day and is like, I'll pay for the computer. Just don't hit my child. And it was like, oh, poor child. It's like, what about the 2 weeks of terror that might have happened before all of this? Like, you don't understand. Like, it's so easy to jump on this side or jump on this side, even with like President Trump and President Biden. It's the same thing. Like, Biden's 100% good. Trump was 100% bad. Neither. It's not. It's neither nor. Like, Donald Trump didn't start a big ass war. Thank you.
But that's what I'm saying. In terms of,
like, people aren't that nuance. That's
exactly what I'm talking about in terms of the inability to access wisdom.
Like,
right?
Get an average Democrat to say something good about what Donald Trump did, right? And they can't say, oh, well, he didn't start a big ass war, or what else? I'm trying to think what else is good he did. I mean,
it's hard.
It's hard. He tried to play tough with China. Okay, what else? I mean, I can't go too far because it ain't a whole bunch, because he ran up the deficit and all. Well, he did a whole bunch of crazy stuff, but like, I mean but even you could look at Biden, you could say the same thing. Like, what he's doing is admirable, but
but I mean,
there are some buts there too, right? So go ahead.
Well, I mean, in terms of just like in terms of finding virtues, like the thing is, it very much is what I'm talking about in terms of being unable to access wisdom, because you have this sort of convergence of three things where, people are having sort of less time to process information. People are more extreme and want to make snap judgments, and at the same time there's this sort of tribalism anyway, so that they're already waiting to they're already waiting to jump on the other side, or they're already they're
looking for
ready.
Information that fits what they want to believe.
Exactly. So like, when you put it's like this perfect storm of sort of division. There's going to be, how do you build consensus? How do you build community? How do you reconcile those things when it's so much easier to be like, to demonize the other side and just go, nope, you guys suck, and you guys are not like us, and you guys, and I don't even need to hear any evidence or context or nuance. You guys are just wrong, right? It's just it's the literally polarizing. So it's just let me, and so again, the wisdom is you can't live like that. You cannot. The wisdom is you have to have middle ground. You have to have all, again, a diversity of opinion, and you need to sort of work toward a majority. You know, it's not about creating a majority on one side and then bullying the other side. It's like, no, we have to build this majority in the middle, and then the fringe. We need to stop listening so much to the fringes. We the force needs to be in the middle, and then just sort of like kind of taper off. But yeah, like that's the we I think we talked about this before. Like, to me, I had always wondered why the Middle East and or like the what created the rift between Israelis and Palestinians. I'm just like, how is it so much, like, how is it so impossible for these two groups to to come to any agreement, to reconcile? How can they not compromise? And then how come over all these years, like, how can they just hate each other? How can they just like automatically hate each other? And I'm just like, oh, this is how. Like, we sort of saw it real time happen to the United States. Is you saw this process of people in
Well,
power pitting one group against the other.
and basically, I don't know what happened per se, but I know that after World War II, they said we're going to take some of this land here, we're going to give it to these people and be okay with it, right?
Hmm.
And anytime you have double standards, you have two sets of rules, different sets of rules for different people,
Different people.
it's coming. Like, the strife is coming. Like, you can't say this is okay for these people, but this is not okay for you guys. Get used to it. It never works. It never works. It didn't work for women and men in America, black people, white people in America. It's not going to work for lesbians, gays. I mean, it's not going to work for, I don't know what's coming next. What's coming next? Gender fluid. It's not going to work. Like, these rules for these people, these rules for other people, and that's where it comes from. It's like, well, it's just like kids in a room, right? You remember when, like, the teacher would say, do you have enough for everyone? No, well, then you can't eat it.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, it's the same rule, right? Like,
Socialist.
if everyone, I mean, you can call it socialist, but if you have 30 kids in the class and 29 pieces of candy, one kid's gonna raise a ruckus. Like, hey man, they all get a piece of candy and I don't. Okay, well then I'm just gonna blow the whole thing up. Blah 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 blah. Like, somebody get this kid a piece of candy so he can shut the bleep up. And then, I mean, socialism, right?
But
So
yeah, I mean, the idea is, yeah. I mean, that's a whole other can of worms, I think. But I think we're sort of slowly drifting into other topics
yeah,
at this point.
yeah, but
Um,
but but I guess to sum it up though, I think what is happening in America is more of an evolution of what how religion will be practiced. I think it's evolving, and I think that's part of it. But I also think that, just like what happens in the black church, a lot of I shouldn't say a
I
lot of
hope.
people. I should say a lot of women in particular, but a lot of people in, especially when they get to our age, they gravitate back to the church because it wraps up a lot of the things that they don't fit in life into a nice bow. And you could go there and say, you know what, it makes sense. This is putting things where I want things to be, and I can proceed with my life. That happens quite a bit to people in our age, where they just say, you know what, I took a break from the church, but I'm just going to swallow it whole because I need it. I need something, right?
Well, I think. Well, that's the other thing. So two quick things, I guess. So number one is, I feel like religion tends to have appealed to sort of two groups of people. So similar to what you're saying, like, so on the one end, I think it appeals to young people and impressionable people, like the romance of it, and
And
the
the neatness of
the
it, like,
yeah, just like the message of it is very appealing to, and this sort of like, yeah, like it seems very appealing to young people. And then people that have gone through trauma,
yep.
that have had their battles
And
and have kind of worked through their battles or
they
are
want some,
still embattled.
and they want some answers. They want it
Yeah.
tied up in a nice bow. Yes.
Yes. Like that's where it also hits. And I think so, yeah, like I think for me, I feel like that is absolutely accurate. Um, Along those lines, I really, I want to kind of go circle back around, and like I would love, like, as I'm putting all these ideas together, once I get to a place, I would love to, if you're cool with it, I would love to pass along some of this stuff to, or discuss it at least with your dad.
I,
If
I,
you know,
he
because
can
like,
he can quote scripture so much better than I can. I can't
yeah,
do it.
I would love to be educated
I can't
by
do it.
by him.
I can't do
Um,
it.
I don't know. I think I might have met your dad one time, like back in the day,
You might have.
but I don't
Was it
remember
wearing a
anything
bow
about
tie?
it. I can't remember. It might have been at graduation. I might have saw.
Yeah.
I might have met him briefly at
Yeah.
graduation. I don't know, but like, but yeah, I would love to, if he's willing to chat and he doesn't feel overly insulted by my stupid theory about
No, no,
about
no,
Christianity,
no,
or about the Ten Commandments.
no.
But like,
I'll go a step further. I have I have my father and I have five super religious uncles, and any of them will be more than happy to do this.
yeah,
Any of them.
no, because I would love to vet this idea with someone who is much more versed in the Bible than I am,
Yeah.
because I would love to get anything that reinforces those thoughts,
Yeah.
and B, to get proper sort of critique and scrutiny of it, so that I need to kind of more fully flesh out and sort of
And
kind of
you
reinforce that
know the
idea.
interesting thing about the proposition of this conversation is that
Hmm.
this is where the church is headed. This is where
I
church is
hope so.
going.
I
This
hope
is where
so.
church is going. Like it's going the same where the same place that education is and entertainment is. Like there there is a growing number of people who wake up in the morning, especially during the pandemic. They wake up, live stream their religious service, and then they cut it off, and then they go back to what they're doing. You're talking about people doing this while they're laying in bed, sitting in a bathtub, sitting in a massage chair, and you cannot tell me after this pandemic that people are going to go back to, you know what? I was sitting at home, laying in bed, or sitting in my massage chair watching this 1 hour service, and now I'm going to commute a half hour, sit in church for an hour and a half, 2 hours, 2.5 hours, drive back home,
Yeah.
and do something that costs 4 hours instead of the hour and a half that it cost before. Some people are going to go to church because they're used to that.
Yeah.
But a lot of people are just going to say, "Hey, can I get the live stream and just
Yeah.
send me a cash app?" And you're going to see people at church like, "This is for the people at the house at home. Hit the cash app, and this is coming to you live. Da 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 da. Right? Like,
Yeah.
that's coming. It's coming. And they're going to be chat rooms where people saying, "Oh, he said this. This is so great. Somebody look up that scripture." Like, it's evolving. So
It's depressing. I mean, this is tangentially related, and I don't expect you to speak any more on this, I guess. But um, I heard a conversation this morning about Bitcoin, and it was contextualized as the world's biggest Ponzi scheme. And I never really thought about it in those terms. So I was just like, I think there's something to that. And I feel very much the same way in terms of modern religion. Is that it's kind of like a giant Ponzi scheme, where in many, like, again, not religion, but churches. A lot of churches are massive Ponzi schemes, and you talking about like the Cash App and hit the Cash App, all that stuff is just like, it just makes me feel dirty. It just makes me feel gross. Um, I know that's probably not how you were intending it
Are you
or how
saying
it's intended in general,
you saying
but
Bitcoin is Ponzi scheme? Well, I hope my Bitcoin is doing some more Ponzi.
well, hey, the thing is, if you're not at the bottom, you're fine. The Ponzi scheme is fine if you're not on the bottom, but
Well, but
that doesn't change the fact that
technically
Ponzi.
speaking, fiat currency is the same thing. The only difference is that fiat currency is backed by a government.
It's
So I mean,
the
if
thing is,
you
there is a difference. You're sounding to me like a Bitcoin convert. Like, the fact that you're using the term fiat currency, by the way, also is a giveaway. That you've been watching too many of these Bitcoin videos.
The only reason I use fiat is because when I buy what you call it, it requires like which fiat currency you're going to use, right?
Sure.
But
Like,
I mean,
yeah.
it's the same thing. I mean, fiat currency is not backed by gold or anything like that. It's just like, we got it. I mean, that's what it is. I mean, since 1970s, like, hey, we're America. We got it. You know what I'm saying? We got it. You know what I'm saying? We America.
But see, the thing is, there is a fundamental difference in that, at the end of the day, whether you believe it or not, all currencies are technically guaranteed by the individual governments. Like, there is, so particularly when you look at the United States, that means something in the United States. So if you're from Greece, or if you're from Venezuela or whatever,
and then that's the issue right there, right? Like, they guarantee, like, hey, it's gonna have some value. They can't guarantee how much value it's gonna have.
Right.
So like you're holding, was it Venezuelan dollars now? Because I watched a couple of podcasts, and like, and like the podcast, like during the podcast, someone like did a super chat. It was like 200,000 like COPs or whatever. Like,
I don't know. Yeah.
I don't know, whatever. And like the guys was like, oh, 200,000, and they did the conversion. It's like, man, that's like $42.
Yeah, no, but that's the thing. I mean, it's pretty.
That's
It's
like
insane.
$42. Yeah.
So there is, but the thing is, like, yeah, compared to some currencies, like, so I can understand if you're in South America, then Bitcoin is just as good as whatever your currency is. But with real money, stuff that there is a difference.
I think Bitcoin is like how should I say? It's the most recognizable. But I do think honestly, I do think that there's going to be a currency. Maybe it's not Bitcoin, maybe by one of the other ones, but it solves a very simple problem, right? When I travel overseas, when I want to buy something on the internet, instead of having to go through these currency exchanges, why can't I just go through something that's universal, right? So it doesn't matter where you are. Like, let's say I want to buy X book, right? And if the book says it costs 0.28 Bitcoin, I don't have to change my dollar depending on what time of the day, and I pay a different amount of money. Go ahead.
But there are three fundamental problems with Bitcoin. There are three fundamental problems with cryptocurrency.
And you're an economist, so I'm listening.
The first and probably the most important is the problem that you're talking about right now. This is actually, the first one is not economics per se, but the first problem is the issue that you're talking about is something that will most likely be addressed. The fact that there's competition will cause banking systems, will cause like these other sort of established brokers to address that specific issue.
I agree with, because Goldman and Sachs, they're going to get their,
they're not going, because the thing is, what they're going to realize,
Yeah.
They're not going to just let people take their money. That's the thing. It's like they're not. So most likely that's going to happen. This and so that's going to happen on the one end. On the one end, the established banking system is going to address all the weaknesses that they have. It's not going to be introducing their own coins like where it sounds like,
No,
but
that yeah.
somewhere along the line, they're going to figure out like, okay, look, let's just have like open exchange rates. We'll reduce the rates for conversion, or we might, whatever. Who knows? Whatever the solution is, they're much smarter than I am, and they have much more at stake. They're going to figure out a way to meet the consumer in the middle if it becomes a threat. On the other side, the second problem that Bitcoin has to deal with is the volatility issue.
Yeah.
Because like you said, it's like, hey, if I can pay 0.28 Bitcoin, well, 0.28 Bitcoin can be worth like $5,000 or it can be worth $2.
Yeah.
Like there's that thing
Yeah.
where the theory of stability. The whole point of currency is for to have a stable store of value, and Bitcoin cannot offer that right now.
No, it
does not offer that. So yes, it's free in terms of like transactions across borders, but in terms of value as a store of value, it is horrible right now. Yes. And so that's the thing. Like even if it keeps going up and up and up, like that makes it meaningless to buy anything with it. Like you can't do it. Like,
that's right.
It's so
that's
stupid.
Right.
So the fact that there's so many swings.
Yeah, that's right.
So Bitcoin needs to address that in general. But the third thing, which Bitcoin also or cryptos also have to deal with, is security. Because at the end of the day, even though no one wants to admit it, the value of cryptos can be manipulated. The blockchain is not secure. Like China has proved that they can China has proved that they can dominate 51% of the hashes. So because they can control it, the government itself can create an entity enough power to manipulate the value of Bitcoin specifically. I don't know about other cryptos right now, but I know for Bitcoin, they have established, I think, close to 50%. So that if they want to verify and they want to manipulate the value of Bitcoin, they can. And that is big trouble for anyone who has Bitcoin, because that means like as soon as China decides they want to cash out, they're going to destroy the value of Bitcoin for everyone else, because they have that much computing power and they have the hive mind to be able to flip the switch. So for me, that's a huge issue. That's a huge issue. What will motivate China to do that? Who knows? But the fact that they can is very scary to me. It's very scary. So so that's not necessarily for other cryptos, but the fact that the whole selling point of blockchain is that it couldn't be hacked. China proved that it can. Because they have the power to do it. And that to me is like, okay, well, if you're not safe from manipulation, then what good are you? It's like, yeah, okay, it's a big exception because it's China, but it's China. It's China.
That's a pretty big, pretty large.
I mean, think about it. If they could absorb all the value of Bitcoin and then crash it immediately, I mean, they got their finger on this economic button. Like, so that to me is what's frightening. It's like, yeah. So that's the thing. So for me, that's why I'm bearish on cryptos. Like, I think absolutely ride the wave right now, but you are gambling because China's fingers on that button.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's to their benefit because it just keeps going up. So yeah, I don't know. But but it's never going to be legitimate. It's never going to be a legitimate currency. That's the thing. Like, is it going to make a lot of people money? Yeah. Yes. Is it going to ever be a legitimate form of exchange?
Well, no. And I think that's the appeal to crypto is that someone's
I
going to
mean,
be left holding the bag, and if you're not,
that's why it's a Ponzi scheme. That's the
and if yeah,
definition of Ponzi
if
scheme.
you're not the one holding it, I mean, look at Doggy Coin, right? Like
Yeah,
Doggy Coin is
Dogecoin. Yeah,
Dogecoin.
yeah,
What's it called? And
Dogecoin. Yeah.
and
But like the thing is that, yeah, absolutely. Like, but that's the thing. That's why I'm saying it's like if you're gonna buy in at whatever 100K a Bitcoin or 200K a Bitcoin, then sorry, you're all right. If you had that much money, good for you. But you could burn it apparently. But yeah, like it's just like any other Ponzi scheme. It's just like what is it? What was it? What was the flower? What was the flower that
oh, the tulips.
tulips? Yeah, it's just like the tulip craze or whatever. It's just like yeah. Um, at the end of the day, people are going to realize like, oh, this is worth nothing. Oh, that's right, this is worth nothing. Okay, okay, let's stop using it, and then never again, right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, 50 grand. Oh, we mean zero. Sorry, we meant zero. It means it's worth zero. That's right. That's right. This means oh, that's right. This is worth zero. That's right. Okay, we forgot. We forgot. Okay, now let's go back to zero. Let's go back to zero. And so like so so if you're again if you were able to ride it, awesome. But if not, again, if you were someone who sold a, I don't know what the tulip craze was, but if you were able to sell a tulip for $1,000, good for you. You made that. That's real money.
This
but
is real money. But yeah,
but yeah, for the person that bought tulips at 1,000 and was trying to sell them for 2,000, and then they went back to zero or went back to like $2 or whatever they're worth, sorry, sorry for you. You know, that's just it. But
well, I I'll play with it, but I'm not playing. You know, it's not enough the money to be serious. But
yeah, I mean, I've
but
got a little bit in Bitcoin as well, but
like
yeah,
I look at how volatile it is, and I don't. I'm really measured about how much money I want to play with,
yeah, like
because like I mean, you see just insane swings. Like I mean, you lose like what 20 or 25% of your amount in like a day or two, or it could
but again,
do the same thing, right?
I'm not an expert though. That's the thing. I'm not an expert. So like, what I'm saying is just take it with a grain of salt because
Well,
like it could just be a legitimate, holder
I
value.
think even experts they're not. I mean, I think they're semi long term, but like I think the appeal to the whole investing in cryptocurrency is that because it's so volatile, you can make a lot of money very quickly,
Yeah.
right?
Well, that's modern investing, man. Like the
Yeah,
whole
that's right.
short,
That's right. Exactly.
the,
Exactly.
the whole short-term investment,
It's
like
not.
options trading, all that stuff.
Yeah,
That's
it's
all
not.
modern, man.
It's not
That
the
is the modern.
whole what's his name, modern investors. None of that. None of that
That's not.
mess.
Yeah, that's not Warren Buffett.
No.
That's not buy and hold for 20 years.
No.
This is, taking advantage of these weird
Micro
random
PG.
mathematical
Means,
jumps.
yeah.
It's just like it's like you know
and
that's
and how
that's
fast
crazy.
you can get your trades in and out, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the thing is, it's like you cannot compete
No,
with computers. You cannot
no,
compete with
no. You can't
the
compete. You can't
the
compete
disparity
with
of
the
knowledge.
well, and you can't compete with the speed of the computers of the big boys because
Yeah.
they get first priority anyway. So
Yeah, so exactly. They get the information first and they get the operation in general faster. So like you, any regular investor is at a
yeah,
huge disadvantage.
huge disadvantage.
And
So
so
unless you're playing a game better in a different way than everyone else is, you just have to take your sloppy seconds and be happy with it.
well you're getting, I mean that's the thing. It's like that I mean what people have to realize is the average person is already getting like sloppy thirds and sloppy fourths, because it's just like anything that gets to them, because it's like, okay, this is where you are. Then there's what Robinhood or whatever the brokerage is, and then
Well,
there's like the
look
actual
at look at
like
what
every
happened with
there's like,
the look what happened with Kelly Loeffler and was it Purdue,
oh
right?
yeah, yeah,
They're like,
right.
oh yeah, we're having a briefing. Oh yeah, this coronavirus, yeah, this some shit.
Well, that's the thing. The
And
companies themselves, right? You've got
they're
the
like,
companies themselves,
they're like,
right? Yeah, exactly,
they
exactly.
go the
No, but
broker like,
yeah,
sell that shit.
yeah, exactly, exactly.
So, I mean, come on, man.
So
Senators
that's
getting privileged information. Come on now.
but that's exactly what I'm saying. Like there's 5, 6 layers. Well, not 5, 6, maybe like 4 layers of information before it gets to the public, and each level they're taking a percentage. They're taking, they're wetting their beak, and so by the time it gets to you, and your delayed trades,
Yeah.
at like whatever 15 minutes, and whatever with your limited knowledge, like you're lucky. I mean, you have, like, that's why for me, you have no choice but to do long-term trading, or
Yeah.
maybe you can do some options trading if you're brave enough. But yeah, like for me, or if you can be on Reddit, if you're on Reddit and you can get like a few million of your friends to do the same things, if you can manipulate the market, then sure, you can do it that way.
Yeah, and don't be one of the like original like 10,000 people. Be
Yeah.
like the 300,000th person, because they're going to get every single one of those guys. They're going to get all of them. They're all going to have to pay.
But that's, I mean, again, like that's what's so hard, man. But
Well, but
anyway,
that's kind of America. I mean, America is.
yeah, I mean, again, like, so to kind of tie it back into the whole religion thing, it's like for me, you know, do what you want, man. Like, do what you want, and take your journey. But at the end of the day, there's a cost. There's going to be a cost. There's going to, and it's not like as simple as, everything gets forgiven. It's, there is a process, there's a cost, there's a journey that you have, there's a way back, that you have to take.
Well, I liken it to like cheating on your spouse, right?
Yeah.
Everyone would think that when if you cheat on a spouse, or cheat on a spouse, or cheat on someone that you really cared about, you cheat on them. Let's say you did it in college or whatever, right? You would think that they're the person that's going to suffer from that, right? But it's not true. Like, the person who suffers from that is you,
Yeah.
because when you actually find someone that's decent, then you're going to start wondering, are they cheating on me, right? And you'll never be able to convince yourself that they wouldn't, because you did.
Right.
And there it is, right? So
But
that's
so
what.
yeah, like that example is great in two regards, right? Because on the one hand, right, you're saying absolutely that it's absolutely correct. This idea that when if someone cheats on their spouse, then they're the one that suffers, right? Because ultimately, a lot of times they flip it and they're just like, okay, well now I like the Chris Rock joke where it's like, I cheat on you, but now I don't trust you, like, because now I'm thinking, when are you going to cheat now,
Yeah.
and that's your suffering.
Yeah.
But on the other end of it, there's also that again, that fundamental reality that losing trust is easy,
Mm-hmm.
but gaining trust
Mm-hmm.
is so hard.
Mm-hmm.
Earning trust is so hard.
Yep.
And you don't appreciate that a lot of times until you lose it. Until you lose it. Right?
Yep.
And that's a kind of lesson that people have to learn. And again, earning it back, you have to do the work. You got to do the work.
And it's a lesson.
If you want that trust back, you got to do that work.
And it's a lesson best learned from someone else.
Ideally, because that's a tough lesson to learn on your own, because it's a tough road.
Yeah, because you trying to learn that lesson again from your own experience. Good luck with that.
Yeah, and that's why it's so much better. It's so much better. Like, but the thing is, it's like sometimes some people have to go through it though. Some people have to go through it to really, to really
real
appreciate
real time.
Yeah.
And some people need to see other people learn from it real time too. Yeah. Like, oh yeah, the Bible talked about not dogging people out. Yeah, it sure did.
Yeah. And sadly, people, sometimes you have to go through it more than once. Sadly, you need to,
Well, if you got to go through it more than once, then you're a knucklehead. So you deserve it. So
but that's the thing. That's the other nature of humans, I was right again. It's part of what I was writing this morning or yesterday, is that the unfortunate force that people work against is that the good things are easily forgotten. You know, a lot of times you only think of good things when something bad happens, right? You only think of them
Yeah,
in context of when things get worse.
that's right.
And so, you can. It's not surprising for me to earn your way back to a trusting place,
Mhm.
and then you're too successful because you take it for granted again, and then boom, it can be gone in a second, and
Yep,
then you're back, and then
that's
you're
right.
back where you're at.
That's right.
Because it's so hard to be appreciative. It's so hard to be.
Well, it's a virtue. It's a virtue.
Yeah.
Just the idea of being happy with what you have already. Like that is a skill that is not practiced in American culture for sure.
But to
Because
me, again, that's why I think the fourth commandment is the fourth commandment. Like that was my interpretation of the seventh day as a Sabbath, right? It's like I extrapolated that as to you
I
need to
got
be aware. You need to be aware, man. You don't
that
take your
you
toils for granted.
you have
Just
enough.
yeah, just
Take
be
a day
aware.
off.
Don't just rest, but you need to take an inventory of what you've got you know like that to me is what the fourth commandment is, where it's just like, hey man, like don't just don't
I'll be interested in when you finish your notes. I'd like to pass them to my dad and have them read them.
yeah, I'll like I said, I got up to 4 today,
All
so
right.
I'm gonna hopefully when I get my first draft done, I'd love to get some more like
Oh,
detail, like I said,
I
like footnotes
yeah,
in terms of actual scripture and some other
absolutely.
stuff.
My dad would
um,
enjoy reading it.
but my thing is, I suspect it's going to get much simpler past. Like, I feel like the first 4 were the toughest ones to really contextualize. The rest of them are pretty straightforward, I think.
Covet your neighbor's house.
I mean, that's pretty straightforward. And plus, it's like the what
Covet your neighbor's wife.
covet is the last one. Covet is 10, yeah. That my wife and your uh, yeah. But anyway,
Yeah, that's pretty
um,
simple. Yeah, yeah,
anyway, I think the last 6 I think are pretty straightforward, but like
yeah,
the first 4 are kind of weird, or it took some work to contextualize, but at any rate,
yeah. Well,
um,
if
I look forward to passing it along.
you should send them to me. I'll send them to him now. I'll let him read it.
Well, like I said, let me finish them first. Once I get them done, I'll send them to you. What? Oh, looking at the
I
camera.
keep looking at you here and not the camera.
Oh, that's all. It's all
Camera,
good, man.
camera, camera.
It's all
Picture camera.
good.
Yeah, I gotta learn that doing these these podcasts. So
Yeah, I'm sure there's some trick that you can do. But at any rate, oh, I keep seeing your eyes drift over.
yeah, I know.
Anyway,
You're there. You're
no.
yeah. So it's a tough trick to learn. It's a tough trick.
Uh,
The only way I could do is like to put the camera here, and then I could look right at you, like, oh right, what's going on?
what
But
you need to
that's
do, what you need to do is to draw, like on a piece of paper, draw 2 big eyes, and then just like tape them next to wherever your eye line needs to be. And so if you're looking at fake eyes, I think that'll be a good reminder. You
hey guys.
know.
I'm gonna try. I got to do something because it's too easy to do this. It's too easy. So
Anyway,
all right,
I
man.
think I think this is a good one.
Oh yeah, yeah. This one. This is a really good one. This is a really good one. I think this one I might put on my on my YouTube page. It's long, but I might
Yeah.
get some of my it's about religion, so I'm sure I can get some of my uncles and aunts and family members to look at it.
Oh, for
So
real? Oh, okay. So you
so
have a channel that you have shared with, like, with your friends and family and stuff?
I mean I did the I shared the what my like Japanese what you call it channel, but I mean they don't speak Japanese, so
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
like religion is up their alley, so
Cool.
like
I'd be curious to see if they
this is right
pick
up
if
their
they.
alley.
I'd be curious to see if they pick anything that we've set apart. I'd love to hear their commentary if
Oh,
they do.
why? Look, they're my family. They'll sit down and talk about. I mean, sports doesn't really get it, but religion. They'll talk about religion for days. So
Nice, nice. I look
so
forward to it.
yeah, I'll drop this on them. I'll drop this. I'll make sure that all of my uncles and aunts can see this one. So
Oh, cool, cool, cool,
yeah,
cool.
and then they'll get a kick out of seeing a Christian Korean talk talk about it
I'm
because,
worried because I'm worried because I cussed once and you cussed a number of times on
dude,
this
come
thing.
on, dude. This is 2020, dude. 2021. Come on now. Come on now. They cuss. They cuss. I got shoot. I mean, my father doesn't cuss, but he cusses in like his old whatever kind of way. But I mean, I know people. I mean, I have people that you ain't got to worry about that part. Don't
All
worry
right,
about
all
that.
right. I got you. I got you. All right, man.
All right,
Well,
man. Have a good one, Mike.
you too. I'll catch you on the next one.
All right, later.
Bye.
There it is.